Okay, I'd like to call the Bristol Selectboard meeting to order on Monday, September 26, 2022. Number one, review agenda for addition, removal, or adjustment of any items.
Yes, I'd like to propose that the request from Kids Cancer Connection, they've requested that the Select Board adopt a proclamation recognizing October 23rd to October 29th as a Childhood Cancer Awareness Week in Bristol.
Okay.
I also add, if we have time, to talk about possibly mining some gravel out of the New Haven River up by the second bridge.
Okay. Where do you want to put that first request?
Could be other business or
You want to put it on other business?
possibly.
So after correspondence or before?
Okay.
Let's do it after. At the end there. Okay.
And what was the other one?
About
Mining gravel?
Gravel out of the river.
We've talked about it before, and it looks like Michelle's making headway.
Okay. Where would you like to put that, Michelle? Any suggestions?
Pick a spot.
Well, okay then. Do you want to do it after actually, let's do it before the American Rescue Plan Act.
Okay, sure.
10A.
10A or 10.1 or however you'd like to do it. Mining gravel from New Haven River. Okay. Anything else?
Not from me.
Okay, super. Number two, overview of Zoom meeting operation and procedures, rules for participation. Please, if you're on Zoom, mute your microphones and be recognized by myself, the chair, if you wish to speak. Item two, public forum. This is 5 minutes for anyone who wishes to discuss something that's not on this evening's agenda. Alrighty. Item three, department head roundtable. Let's start with Sharon. In the town office.
Hello.
Hello.
First, today is my 5-year anniversary here.
Yay!
Congratulations, you made it.
Thankfully.
Thankfully. Elections are going good. We haven't seen any ballots come to voters yet, so some of them are getting ahead of the game and requesting them, and it's like, no, you have to wait and get them from the state. If you don't get it, then call us and we'll send you one. We're doing water bills. Hopefully they'll go out tomorrow, and then Anthony and I will be working on getting the tax bills out by the end of the week. So that's my week right now.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much. Any questions for Sharon this evening? All right, moving on. Let's move to Anthony, town treasurer.
Hi guys. As far as what I've been working on, I'll just reiterate what Sharon said to start. Tax bills are going out this week. We should be finalizing, entering it, and hopefully printing them on the sooner side. We just need to get the water bills all situated, but they will be going out this week. Another thing I've been working on is trying to deal with this banking mess. There's been a lot of issues with the bank M&T with their transition and their takeover of People's United Bank. So we've had a lot of issues. It's been going on a week and a half, if not longer, of just constantly being on hold and trying to get a hold of someone. So we've been dealing with that. And I've just been crunching a lot of numbers financially to see where we are and tying out FY22's due to, due froms.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. Any questions for Anthony?
I'd like to add that he's also been working very closely with Peter Ryan to get a firm handle on the work that Peter has been doing for the treasurer's office so that Peter can retire.
Officially retire.
Yeah.
It's not like he hasn't been retired for since 03, but yeah, officially.
So
Trying to
they're
wrap up that as well.
right. That's been a high priority.
Mhm.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Anthony. Let's go to Eric, Public Works Department. I know you're there in person.
Yep. We got our winter stand up. Well, we got 5 loads left to go, so pretty much all the winter stands up. Started getting a little bit of salt. Let's see. Chris he passed his Class A license. So he's got that all taken care of. Brett goes for his Wednesday at 9. And I think Colby is first week of October, sometime that first week. So hopefully everything goes right. By the end of the first week of October, everybody will be back. And we can actually do something other than just routine stuff. Oh, and I don't know when you guys want to do it, but I got the prices for the sidewalk in front of the dentist and on base, oh, that's coming up, never mind.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else is there? Got Nortrack coming down, or United coming down, to check the grade out. We got an issue with the transmission on the grader. It's not shifting properly. So they're coming down tomorrow to put it on the computer, see what's going on with that. We got truck 4 back. That seems to be all up and okay for now. Just been plugging away at normal stuff, trying to get ahead.
How's the sidewalk plow? Is that all ready to go? I know that we've often had issues with that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll end up having to put blades on it probably after a few times out, but yeah, it's ready to go. The sander's ready to go. And we do all that stuff in November anyways to get everything up and going. Plows on, wings on, all that we do in November.
Okay. Great. All right. Any questions for Eric?
Just a question, Eric. I see Bagley was in doing the mowing over the
Oh.
guardrails.
Yeah,
How's that going?
all done.
All done. Oh, good.
Yeah,
It's going good.
He did quite a bit for the time that he was here. I personally think we definitely got our money's worth out of him. So I should be getting a bill from that probably next week. But yeah, he did. I think he did a fairly decent job, not knowing the area. And if we decide to do it again, have him do it again, I think it'll just be better. So.
Brett asked the question.
I was just about to ask the same question that Brett just put in the chat about the schedule for trimming back the bushes on the sidewalks. And also I wanted to ask if the tree trimming has been handled yet.
I left a message on Brett's phone, Sergeant, to call me, to meet up with me so we can go around and do the tree trimming on the streets, for height. And as far as the sidewalk goes, yes, we will be going back around like we normally do. Usually middle of October is usually when we go around to give people the opportunity to do it themselves before we come through. So
If you got time, you might want to push that up so they've got a little bit more time before you have to do it.
I could, if Sharon's available, she could send a letter out right now as far as that goes, to have the people trim them back.
Need to let me know who.
Everybody.
I would put it out
Everybody in
on
the
the
village
front
will
porch
sidewalk.
forum.
I'll do my sidewalk.
Sharon, put it out in front porch forum if you would please, and just
Okay.
say that, we're gonna be going around second, third week of October, and whatever they don't get done, we'll take care of.
Okay.
Have we
Great.
got any problem areas that we should actually send letters to
Yeah.
people?
Yeah, there are. Yeah, Brett might have, he walks a lot more than I do, so he may have a good idea of what our problem, but yeah, I know at least 3 or 4 of them that I could tell Sharon to send specifically to.
I think the more time we give them, the better
Yeah,
off.
I do too, Pete.
Yeah. I think that's good.
And
And yeah, and when I'm walking around, I'll
Promise to
try to
trim mine.
make a note. Thanks, Darla. Okay, thank you, Eric. Let's do Chris, who's next to you, zoning administrator. Any updates, Chris?
As you know, we had a concerned neighbor on a project. I emailed you all out the response that I sent to the neighbor, received response from said neighbor. They seem appeased by the answer. I mean, at the end, her email ends with, I just wanted to know how he got the permit, and you explained it well, thank you. So all in all, it seems like it's fine. I mean, they're not necessarily happy, but they understand why it was permitted.
Okay. Yeah, I thought your response was excellent. I guess my only question I had was, it doesn't go through development review because it's all based on existing zoning regulations for buildings, correct?
That's correct. By right use is an administrative permit only.
Okay, I thought so. Okay, great. Anything else?
No, good. Actually, we have a tree that needed to come down to close out a subdivision that there were some issues with, and the resolve was they gave us a deposit. If in 30 days they don't take it down, Eric's going to coordinate and have it taken down at the owner's expense. So.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Chris? Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to Bruce, Police Department.
Calls for service are steady. Nothing really new to report. We are trying to focus as we get a little more time on some of the speed, especially here in the village. They're not the usual.
Is the speed increasing, have you noticed, or just it's your regular sort of patrolling of that or monitoring of that?
We are receiving more calls of people that are concerned. So
Okay.
we're trying to focus a little more on, especially on the calls the areas we get the most calls from.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Any questions for Bruce? Okay, thank you, Bruce. Brett, Fire Department.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone. Just a couple of quick updates for the group. Valerie, I'm not sure if you had an opportunity to share that bulletin I shared with you yesterday regarding apparatus production.
It was included in the other business materials on
Okay.
the.
Yep. Great. Yeah, our vendor who is building the town's new fire pumper, HME, they send out a regular bulletin, and this one speaks specifically to production lead time and some of the challenges they face as far as procuring resources, parts, etc. I think it's a very common theme across the country. Pretty much doesn't matter what you're trying to get, but I found it very informative and very helpful to have this bulletin really laying out the challenges they're facing and the efforts they're making to acquire said parts and build the town's new truck. And as I think you folks all know, we had the second delay, and we're currently looking at a November delivery time. Yeah, I'm trying to be optimistic, but I also live in the real world. So, but as a note I shared with that working group the other day, I certainly appreciate their ongoing efforts to ensure our truck is built and delivered in a timely manner. And unfortunately, some things are just quite frankly out of our control. But we have persevered, and we've certainly gotten through worse before as a group, and we will get through this. So as we have been. Just thought that was worth noting. Otherwise, I just really like to acknowledge and thank a couple of businesses, a week ago Saturday, the 17th of September, many members of the Bristol Fire Department, accompanied by a couple of members from the Brandon Fire Department, spent the day at the fire station out back for an all-day vehicle extrication training that was put on by the Vermont Fire Academy. It was a great day of training, collaboration with partners, and it was just absolutely gorgeous day. But certainly things like this, trainings like this, don't come off successfully without support of vendors, businesses, and many others. And a couple just I'd like to mention, and it's not the first time these folks have volunteered, or made donations, but GHR Metal and Recycling, and these businesses all donated the necessary vehicles for this training. So GHR Metal Recycling, Packard of Vermont, and County Tire Center. And of course, I'd also like to thank Kevin Harper and his business partner for allowing the fire department to utilize his property, the empty building lot directly behind the fire station, as that's the area we use to clean up the cars, or to extricate the cars. We're working on getting them all removed. There were 7 there, we're down to 2. But it is a priority to get them out of there. And once the last vehicle's removed, I will go over there and sweep up any remaining fragments of glass that lay around before snow flies. But other than that, we've been still kind of on a pretty fast pace for calls. We've been on 112 calls for service this year. But things are going well. We've got a couple firefighters enrolled in a training program, but all is good. Anybody have any questions? I'd be happy to answer them.
It looks like you've got some activity happening over there to the left of the fire station with the new housing.
Yeah. It's obviously I've Naylor and Bream. I don't know the person's title, but a person who's involved in this and has some type of lead, who's actually a Bristol resident as well. But he was so kind to provide me a copy of the current plans, so I could just share them with the department. And actually the email that I think Valerie passed along to us this evening about the October 26th, I'll call it ribbon cutting event. I don't know what the official title was, but that will take place at the fire station. There was an image, a drawing of what that will look like. So I took the liberty of sharing that with the department, and picture speaks 1,000 words, just so everybody can get an idea. I've been trying to explain to people what it's going to look like, but picture really helps. So, but we've been in communication with those folks. It's obviously a lot of traffic over there, a lot of commercial vehicles in and out doing their thing. But I certainly have no concerns, and no, looking forward to continuing to watch this area be developed for the betterment of the town.
Yeah, and it looks like, I know there was a concern about the trail network, since the trail starts right where they're digging, and it looks like they have excavated a path just behind where they started. Oh,
they have. I walked on it yesterday.
And so it looks like if people are interested in terms of walking that trail, you can walk down the main sidewalks there, go right past where they're starting to do excavation, and to your left you'll see a new excavated area where you can walk down through the dirt and be able to join the trails on the left-hand side.
And just something worth noting as far as safety. So today, speaking of excavation, they were definitely digging some holes today, and I guess they're probably prepping for some footers for concrete that I understand will be poured next month. But they dug pretty much right up to the edge of the town's new sidewalk. They did ribbon it all off with orange ribbon, but obviously that's not a true barrier. Anybody was to lose their balance, they're going to go for a spill. So just be mindful of that as you're walking through there.
Okay.
Can folks see the image that I'm sharing?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, looks great. It's going to be a wonderful area. Okay. Any other questions for Brett? Terrific. Thank you, Brett. And finally, we'll do Jill and Cy, our water operators. What have you guys been up to?
Oh my. So we are still going through the challenge of the generator. So just to kind of give you guys a quick update, the power upgrade occurred the week before last week when we went from Delta Power, which is known as Wild Leg, over to Y Power. It appeared to work until 3:30 the following morning when the first alarm came through that we had the breaker pop to the facility. So went there, ran off generator power, came back at 8 in the morning, made sure the tank was full, got Brookfield service over there, looked over everything. Couldn't really figure out exactly why it had popped, so we went back to line power. Then at 8:30 that night, we had our next pump failure, which again was pump 2 failing. This time it was popping the breakers and whatnot inside of the control panel. So at that point, that was pump 2 twice. They were scheduled to come Monday to install the VFD and the line reactor. So we stuck with the plan, switched the programming over to pump 1 only, knowing that there's something going on with pump 2 in this new power service. The vendors came, they installed the VFD, they installed the line reactor. They did so on pump 2 because I didn't want to take my only pump that I had out of service. And once it was started up, it ran for 4 minutes on the VFD, slammed off, turned back on for a second, went click, and that was it. That was all that motor had. So, but one of the vendors that was doing the programming for the VFD said, who is one of the vendors that does servicing on our motors, was that with a grounded service now, anything that's not grounded or is grounded inside of our facility will now show itself. Mm. So this was a case of the power service type changing and the facility finding its that motor grounded itself out and ceased to work. So late last week, middle of last week, we shut down the pump house and pulled that complete motor and pump out of place. We took the spare motor that we had rebuilt and pulled out of pump 1 position, brought that and the pump off of pump 2 up to Roger, and he is working on putting them back together so that we'll have a pump and motor assembly to put into line within the next 2 weeks. We are still waiting to receive the brand new pump and motor that was ordered back this spring. Once that comes, we would like to install that in its place. So we have, one that's just a year old and one that's brand new, and then just what's being rebuilt by Roger right now as an emergency, just set that as a backup. So it's been super frustrating, but this is what happens when you do change. Every change comes at a cost, and this one has been a bit of a beating. Lots of emotional fist swinging, shall we say, but we're getting through it. We're getting there. I feel like we've met our quota. I don't really feel like anything else should go wrong at this point. We've got to be there. So once that pump goes back online in the next 2 weeks, we'll then be able to have the programming and the electrical company come back, finish their programming. At that point, we should be back up to 2 pumps running alternately, with one that will run if there's a power outage off of the generator. At that point, we will be able to see if the generator can actually run the pump with a VFD, and then wait another 4 more months for the second VFD to go on pump 1. Once that's installed and programmed and running smoothly, which again is now, so like 10, 11, 12, maybe January-ish, this project should be complete.
January of 2023 or January of 2024?
I don't know. I mean, I don't even want to. Yeah. So it's been exciting, and I'm learning patience. I'm learning to roll with it. I'm learning to not let it become personal.
So do we have any idea when that other pump that you ordered in the spring is going to be here?
We had followed up several times with the pump company, and they informed us that the only retailer that's allowed to buy those pumps in the state inadvertently forgot to order it. So they advertently ordered it when reminded several times, and apologized sincerely. But yeah, so it's like I don't know. This has been the year of the gremlins. This has been the year of if something's going to smack you a little bit harder, it seems as though this is the year it feels like doing that. So I'm just going to keep on chucking up that hill.
Joe, we do have one pump that's filling the reservoir, right?
Oh, yes. And thank God it's pump one that we just barely rebuilt and installed last year. So it's one with very few hours on it that's newly installed and running quite well.
If that goes down, we're SOL.
Oh God, you'll see me flailing on the floor if that happens. Yep. That's
So
why Roger is.
Let me know when that happens. I want to bring my camera phone.
What's that?
When that happens, I want to bring my phone to doctor.
I'll call Eric first. Cyrus will be there. He'll call Eric and they'll witness it.
We pumped water to that reservoir 20 odd years ago, probably 25 years ago with a fire truck.
Well, there's ways to move water. It's just, we move a very big column of water. We move 520 gallons a minute. So it's pretty impressive. We're 200 to 300,000 gallons a day. That's a lot of trips back and forth, but.
I'll bring my bucket.
Yeah.
So pump one didn't have the issues that pump two had because it was a newer pump and didn't have the grounding issues, correct?
Yeah. So I definitely asked the question to be explained to me many times by the gentleman that was there doing the programming that does the pump rehabilitations. I said, I don't understand. It's literally the same motor. How can this one be grounded and this one's not grounded? And he goes, no, it's not like the pump was set up a different way. It's that something that's wire inside of it is like touching where it shouldn't be and it's grounding out. Yeah. It's like, this is an electrical thing where it's saying, okay, it's time to rebuild me. And I just said, boy, I wish I would have known this before I let you change the power type. But here's another thing I learned. Apparently, with an ungrounded service that we had someone place their hand on that pump at the same time as there was a puddle on the floor or another piece of metal, they actually could have been electrocuted and killed.
Yeah.
So, if we're looking at, hey, are we moving in the right direction? I say, yes, we are. It's just the road there is a bit, it's bumpier than I had anticipated. And therefore there's just more steps, but we'll get there. We'll have relatively new pumps and motors. And I'm not real excited about doing a controls upgrade. I can tell you that. I'm in no hurry.
Well, the grounding is going to help you, so you guys can actually survive working in that environment.
Yeah.
It's something that should have been done a long time ago, but obviously, as you described it, there's a lot of different things that then cascade once you change one thing. But it sounds like everything's heading in the right direction. Things have been recognized and are in the middle of being worked on. So that's good.
Well, and I needed kind of like a non-involved party to be unpartisan and just give me some advice. So I had called up a control specialist that we work with on our controls at that facility. And he said, you're doing everything you need to do. This is normal. This happens. Nobody was out to get you. This isn't something that you could have necessarily planned for. This is what happens when you change your power service over. Just be glad nobody got hurt and move ahead. So we are where we are.
That's good. That's very good to hear. Excellent. Any other questions for Jill?
Is that a hand up in the corner?
No.
It's this guy. Jimmy's. Is it? No. It's Tony.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Jill.
You're welcome.
Okay. Let's move on if I haven't forgotten anyone.
Meredith on?
So.
No, Meredith will be here.
No, not here. Okay. Item 4, public hearing, adoption of an ordinance to regulate traffic and vehicular speeds with the town of Bristol. This is our third public hearing on this matter.
Hopefully folks had a chance to review my notes and the updated document, but just to highlight the changes from the previous document, a new section under Article 5 was added. to include a section for 15 miles per hour, and Airport Drive, Lawrence Lane, and Lower Meadow Lane were included in that section. I did not change the subsequent section numbers just in case we end up not keeping it. And I made some other corrections to street names. I added or maintained the 30 mile per hour zone and added Upper Notch Road, Upper Meehan Road, and I don't know what other roads fit in that section. That's about it.
Okay. Now, Chris had mentioned at our last meeting there were a few names and numbers incorrect. Have those been updated in our latest draft here?
I hope so,
To the best of your ability?
as far as I know, but
Okay.
hopefully folks will catch the ones that might not have gotten updated.
Okay.
Highway numbers are still off.
What was that?
Your highway numbers are still off.
The highway numbers? Okay.
I don't know. What does that mean?
Where you call out, like Airport Drive on 518, you refer to it as Town Highway 312, and that's not its accurate number.
Huh, okay.
There's 4 or 5 that are that way. They just need those numbers updated.
Okay.
But they are.
Can you, Chris, so you mentioned that in your last meeting, did you send your corrections to Val regarding that, if you know the numbers?
Yep.
Okay.
Did you say, did you or will you?
I asked, did he send them?
Yeah. I
thought you said, will I?
He will, he said.
He will. That's great. No,
Yeah.
I was because you'd mentioned the same thing last meeting, so I was curious if you had sent notes to Val from that previous meeting. But if you can, that would be great.
I must have missed that detail, and I didn't have that in my notes.
Okay. The other thing that Chris brought up last time was looking at areas that, like Lawrence Lane or Lower Meadow, that are very short areas that you're never going to do 25 on, and adding them to a 15.
Right.
There's a couple others that are in there. So currently they're actually listed as 30, and we've never had any issues with them. Do we still want to keep the 15, or do we just have a blanket 25?
I think
Because
you go blanket 25.
Okay. Yeah, because we
like
can get
Bruce
really
said.
granular about it, but then looking at the map, it's like, oh, High Street up off on Mountain Terrace, you're never going to get up to 25, and that's a small lane, just like Lawrence Lane. Do we add that in, or do we just keep it as we've done?
Bruce said in a previous meeting, he said if it's unsafe, he can still stop you. So
Okay.
if he deems that 25 on Lawrence Lane is unsafe, which I would assume he would, then he has the ability to stop somebody.
Okay.
Is that correct, Bruce?
Yeah, well, usually the unsafe speed comes into play when somebody is driving too fast, and because of either the road condition or the road itself, and they can't maintain a safe speed, and there's a crash of some sort. So, that's why it's 30, blanket 30 for the village, and then if we're going to 25, make it blanket for the village, or excuse me, the old village 25.
Yeah. Okay.
And if there is that much of a pushback on Airport Drive, which has been that way for years, then we get to the point that we don't allow anybody to go 1 mile an hour over the speed limit. We'll stop them, write them for going 1 over. I mean, I don't want to make this difficult. This shouldn't be confusing. It's just we want things to be safe.
Okay.
You've got
Okay.
questions or comments in the back of the room here, Ian.
Okay.
Louis, so you want?
Sure, I'll go up first. I just read in the paper last week about this being the third one. I don't feel it's been publicized very well at all for people to know you had these conversations. I did not see it in the paper being advertised. If you just do front porch forum, majority of people in the village do not do front page forum or in the town, not just the village. I guess I don't quite understand the big push on this, because I haven't read in the police report about any accidents happening or anybody getting hit. The only accidents I ever read in the police report is in Prince Lane where people are doing 5, 10, 15 miles an hour anyway. I personally think those, at each end of coming into town, those speed limit signs telling you how fast they are, they get my attention every time coming into town, and I think they work well. And with the new technology of vehicles, of how fast they stop, and how many cameras are on all of them, and how they brake automatically without you even touching the brake, I just don't understand where this push is coming to change down to 25. My personal opinion, not hardly any town in the state of Vermont needs to be 25, except for maybe Brandon in the very middle where it's thin and a bunch of curves. I'd like to have someone explain to me how they're coming up with the logic of this.
Okay, thank you. I mean, our initial discussion, Joel.
Yeah, I'll jump in here, Louis. This started months ago when we
Started years ago.
Years ago, really, when, there's a lot of walkers in the village.
Correct.
And my street is just plain loaded with no sidewalk, Pine Street. And I've done I go out and visit with people when they're going by, if I'm in the garage, and I'll say, how do you deal with traffic in here? I go, well, we just get off and let them go by and this and that.
Yeah.
And they can talk about possibly making it one way and this and that, throwing all these other things around. And I thought, why don't we, instead of penalizing people who live on the streets that don't have sidewalks and maybe making them one way, why don't we look at making it 25? This first proposal of mine was make all the streets in the former village that are 30, 25, with the exception of east, west, and north. I still feel to this day that east, west, and north are wide enough, sidewalks are far enough apart that they could stay 30.
I agree with
30
that.
down my street or down Taylor Avenue or around
I'm
the
just
street.
saying, most people don't go that fast anyway.
And
That's
I
my
don't
point.
think the
Most
police are
people,
gonna
I
jump
thought
at you if you're doing 29 going down Pine Street, but they have the option if you're racing down through there. And there was also talk, we've had a pedestrian, and I don't speak for them because we haven't heard their full report, but there was thoughts of putting stop signs at the corner of Pine and Taylor, Maple and Pine,
That's ridiculous.
Munsell and Pine,
I feel too
and
many
Liberty
people.
and Pine. And
There's too many people coming here from out of state changing this town. And that's baloney.
I'm not speaking for them.
I'm speaking for them.
But
That's baloney.
we haven't heard the report, so I'm gonna
No,
listen to the report first. But that's where you
absolutely
wanted to know a little
ridiculous.
background. I just thought I'd give you a little background. I thought that we look at doing 25 on the side streets. I call them the side streets. I still don't want to do east, west, and north.
Okay, well, the thing the report says is the town-wide. So.
And now it's
you're-
become townwide, yes.
Village-wide.
Or village-wide, sure.
Village-wide.
The old
But you're saying coming in on the main highways,
Come in on
North Street.
and I agree with you, those things, they get my
16,
attention, and
yeah.
I've talked to two of the owners by those, and they've told me it really makes a difference. They see people slowing down.
Oh,
North Street.
absolutely. I agree 100% with that. They do. I think it's a great thing that those got put up.
Yeah.
And the streets are plenty wide enough, like you said, on Main Street that
Well, Maine, I don't
see.
think going down 30, yeah,
no one's gonna go that fast anyway,
But, yes.
for the most part.
exactly.
I have a question too.
Okay,
I'm
I'm
done.
done. Go ahead,
Sorry.
her turn.
I have a couple questions. First of all, if somebody could just kind of define briefly where the kind of village ends and the town begins, so to speak. Secondly, it's my understanding based on state statute that you have to do a certified traffic survey in order to reduce the speed, anything below 30 miles an hour or above 50 miles an hour. So I haven't seen anything that said that was done. Don't know if it's been done or not. But if it's not been done, because I certainly haven't driven over any of those cords across the road, I agree with what you're saying about leaving the east-west, and I think those at 30 miles an hour are fine. I personally don't live in the village, so I don't know what it's like to be a resident and see people driving at say 30 on some of the side streets, as you explained. But I've been a walker. I used to come into town 5 o'clock in the morning and walk down Pine Street and various other streets. Now granted, there's not a lot of traffic at 5 o'clock in the morning, but I think that the streets that have the sidewalks is indicative of the streets are wide enough, like you say, to accommodate 30 miles an hour. I'd like to know about the traffic survey. I'd like to know if excuse me, if you do change it to 25, if that is whoever votes on that, I don't know if it's the people or you guys, but if that happens, you gotta have the cost of all of those signs changed, so what does that cost? And who is gonna incur that? Are the taxpayers incurring the cost of those signs? Excuse me. And I assume, based on what the chief said, is that they have tried to give some attention to the areas where they've received some complaints. So I guess my question would be, A, how many tickets have been written on some of these streets that people are complaining about? Are the complaints coming specifically from residents of that area? How much radar is being run? And if you do change it to 25, what I don't want to see happen is all of a sudden, not saying it's going to, that because now we have this new speed limit, is now we're gonna enforce it, and the cops go out there, and I'm a 30-year veteran of being a cop, and just hammer the people with radar, and are killing them at 25 miles an hour. If you're gonna do that at 25, then do it at 30. You know, and if it's unsafe, as the chief says, you're driving down Taylor Avenue, and somebody is going faster than what is reasonable for the traffic conditions or the road conditions, then the police have every right to stop and ticket somebody for doing that. You don't need to change it to 25. Does that make sense?
That makes
So I
sense.
know that was a lot of questions, but
That makes
I guess the
sense.
biggest one is, has there been a traffic survey? I don't know that Bristol has one, but in South Burlington, we have this, we call it cop in a box. And it's kind of like the little thing that tells you how fast you're going, but it would give you data back, like how many cars are doing, you know, X amount of speed and the time of day and all that type of thing. I don't know if Bristol has one of those, but, you know, that might be an avenue for trying to monitor. That gave us in the police department of, hey, there's really a lot of traffic problems in this particular area, high speeding, and the residents aren't really complaining, but why don't we do some focusing there for some traffic enforcement? So those are my questions.
So your first question, the village limits are, would be by Pine Tree Gardens,
Okay,
the top of Stony Hill, the Lord's Fair Rock, and the Hewitt Road Bridge.
okay,
And then as far as the traffic study, a traffic study was done. It supported lowering on some of the streets, and it actually suggested raising on others.
Okay.
East Street was suggested raising, North Street was supported lowering.
is
and
East Street 160?
East Street is
Yes.
116
Okay.
headed
South of-
out
south of-
from
downtown.
Mountain
Yeah.
Street, Mountain Street.
Okay,
Mountain Street out.
And that was done by Addison County Regional Planning.
So that wasn't by the state. It has to be done by the state.
It was,
No.
It was,
Yeah, isn't it?
it was done with a grant from Madison County Regional Planning, who does that, probably
By
got
the,
paid
for
by
the state, they do it for the state.
And they were actually, and that report was to increase, Liberty Street to 35.
Yeah.
We're going, you know,
Yeah, that's what it's,
and what it's based on the speed that the vehicles are traveling. Well, you know, it's based on the speed that the vehicles are traveling when they go over those counters.
right,
You know, you being in law enforcement, you should know that unless you get an officer with a hair across their butt, that they're probably not going to stop somebody for a couple miles an hour over the speed limit.
no,
By lowering the speed limit to 25, we give them the option to be able to stop somebody at 30 or just over 30. They did it years ago in 77, I believe it was. They did it in the town. We were having trouble with speeding, and they lowered it to 40 on Moncton Road, Burpee Road and Moncton Road, from 50 to 40. And the state police at that point told the board, and I only know this because my father was on the board and I remember him talking about it, but they told them they're not going to stop people for doing 45.
Mhm.
They wanted the speed limit changed so that people were doing over 50 they could stop them and it would be a ticket worth writing.
Okay.
And that, you know, that's the similar thought here.
I hate that analogy though. That's just so wrong. Just so wrong.
Well, do you want to be stopped for doing 31 miles an hour when you come into the village?
No, they should give to 35.
There you go.
But that's what he's saying though.
But, yeah, but to give that, because you're gonna get half the people driving under 25, which you have now anyway. Same with Moncton Road. You got people on Moncton Road, which is the only way we have from Bristol to get to Heinsberg, and everyone's doing 40 because they don't want to go 50. Now, if you put in the paper, everyone can go 50, then they're gonna go 50, but it doesn't happen now. That's not the way the law is made. The law is not made for you to drop it to 25 just so you can get 30. That's just wrong.
I mean, as a matter of fact, the V-Trans document they released in the Q&A section, it addresses that exact statement. And it says, should the speed limit be set 5 to 10 miles below what the investigation indicates to make up for the tolerance allowed by law enforcement officers? The answer, no. The statute does not provide for tolerance.
So,
Speed limit set too low is not realistic and will not command the respect of motorists.
so how did the speed limit get changed to 40 from the Lord's Fair, from 40 from the Lord's Fair Rock to the Twin Bridges when it supports a higher speed limit based on the traffic survey? And that's the state of Vermont. That's not us.
Right, that's the state. I don't know.
I mean, they don't follow their own rules.
But the whole purpose for 25 isn't necessarily for getting a speeding ticket. It was for the safety of the people in the town. It wasn't to get them speeding. It wasn't for Bruce to give tickets out.
Well, I mean, the first 5 years, you can't ticket anyways.
Ian, Fred would like to speak.
Can the lady who spoke just recently, can she identify herself quickly?
Yep, Tanya, lawyer.
Thank you.
You know what mine is?
Fred Schroeder would like to speak.
You know what you're
Okay, Fred Schroeder.
Peter said that.
Fred Schroeder would like to speak.
Okay, Fred.
I'm Fred Schroeder. I live on Notch Road, and about, I'm gonna say 15 years ago, I came to a select board meeting, and some of the people were here, and we talked, same select board members were here, and we talked about lowering the speed limit on my road. I live on Notch Road, and the speed limit it's 35, and people go much, much faster, and I was upset because I was home at the time and just people were ripping up the hill. I live on the hill, and people just wail up the hill all day long. And so they sent Randy there. He did some enforcement. They put one of those speed signs.
Speed cards.
Yeah, so it tells you how fast you're going and you're breaking the law and it flashes at you. And Randy wrote, I think, one ticket. It showed there was very little speeding going on except for certain times of the day. I have to disagree with it. It would seem like all the time. Anyway, he came and went, and that was it. And they're still speeding 15 years later. It's a matter of enforcement, and I think you can get the same result at 30 miles an hour as you can at 25. You don't need to raise the speed limit. It's if Bruce can write.
You don't need to raise it or lower it.
I'm sorry, you don't have to lower the speeding limit. It's if Bruce can write tickets for unsafe speed or driving unsafe in too fast for conditions. That's really all it needs to be. I'm not in favor of writing laws that don't need to be written, and especially ones that aren't going to get enforced. So, 30 miles an hour is pretty slow. It's pretty slow. So that's just how I feel. I don't live in town, but I travel through it all day long, and I think 30 is fine.
I drove all through town at 25 miles an hour, and I thought I was gonna fall asleep. I mean, if I was on my motorcycle, I'd probably fall over.
I mean, do you feel that by changing it,
Don't do that again.
No.
by changing it to 25, do you feel that this is going to impact you in a negative way?
I think it's gonna impact everybody in a negative way. You're putting extra pressure on people you shouldn't be putting on. You're causing anxiety.
Anxiety to go slower through town?
No, anxiety of putting the pressure of going slower and rather than going to get in trouble.
If you thought, or I'm going to ask the 4 or 5 of you here.
Yeah.
If we picked out some streets, when I said Elm, Taylor.
Side streets wouldn't be that bad if you want to try without sidewalks.
Those
That'd be
types of
fine.
streets.
But don't have it
Pleasant,
town-wide.
West Pleasant. Maple, those streets.
You got like Mountain Street when school's in session, you got certain times. Perfect, that's the way it should be.
Yep.
But if you have, like you said, you got some small streets, and see, I can't imagine there's that many people going fast, even on the side street, except for maybe some young kids getting out of school and ripping up through there at 3 o'clock or first thing in the morning to pick up their friends. I can't really picture most of those people living on all those side streets go fast.
Well, most of the people after school realize when we did the big dig from Maple Street to West Street down to Airport Drive, when they dig that up, they realized that if you cut through town and go north from Liberty to Pine, my street is extremely, I love to live on my street on Sundays. I can play basketball out on the road and nobody goes by. But it's Saturday morning, I know the dump, but it was there before I got there. And I know what the traffic is. And but it's the evening from 4:30 to 6:30, quite a lot of traffic on that street. Liberty to
You think we get on our scrap?
Oh, yeah.
45 years ago when I moved there, I see about 5 milk trucks a day and that maybe a couple farm tractors.
Yeah, and
I
now
see a lot of farm tractors still.
So,
but
I
all
would
those
like to
developments
see
being put in,
some side streets.
same thing.
Yeah. And Fred, you were talking about that. It was just above, that sign was put up just above Jimmy Kuzno's in Rocky's place.
Right.
And we did get a report on that. And like at 3 a.m, we had reports of somebody doing 95 out there.
Right. Which
so somebody was trying to see what they could get that sign from 116, see what they could go buy that.
Well, not only that, I mean, it's been proven out that, I mean, the whole 85th percentile tool that they use to set these is that the 85% of the people are going to travel at the safest speed of the road. That's why they use that metric to set speed limits. The 15% that are speeding, whether you set this at 15 miles an hour or 40 miles an hour, those people are still going to speed in the village. They're going to drive at the speed that they feel is safe, which is unsafe. To make a sweeping change without A, having done the study, and B, for no real, there's no, like
no real
point. We aren't seeing a huge influx of accidents. I walk these streets 3-4 times a week, and in the mornings at around 8 o'clock when that's busy go time as well. It's not that crazy.
No.
And
the bump outs really help for the crosswalks.
And for me, the big one is where there's sidewalks, you walk on the sidewalk. A lot of people don't. That's a different pet peeve I have. But if people actually utilized our sidewalk system, most of our roads like Pleasant Street and all those, they're awful damn safe. But we don't. We walk. For some reason, everyone walks in the middle of the road. And then they're upset when the cars are going by. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to make a change, especially one that's unenforceable for 5 years. I'm not sure what the rationale is. Why we're doing this.
Where did this come from to begin with? That's what I want to know. Who brought this up and why?
I brought it up.
You brought it up?
I brought it up because the conversations led to me to bring something up. Because we've been talking about making Pine Street and some other streets and the pedestrian bike committee. Like I said, I can't speak for them because we haven't seen their report yet, but they've been meeting about traffic in the village.
Because I've been talking to everybody.
I'm gonna hope the board hears all this and we slow the reins down a little bit and listen to the report first. Get their report, you get more comments.
Yeah, let's have some more, because I've been talking, majority of people I've been talking all over town, down to the Legion and stuff, are not happy about this whole thing. And
I've heard it.
Did I miss something? Was it warranted in the paper? Yes. About having these meetings?
It was on the agenda, so I know it was on Front Porch.
It was on front, but I'm sick of hearing about Front Porch Forum. That's not the way. Anything should be put in a paper, just like the rest of the town stuff. It should be.
No, the town stuff is warned at Shaw's out front at Lawrence Library. Those are the 3 spots that we have to.
No.
We don't have to do the paper either.
No.
Only special things like town meeting, you have to put that in there.
So on bulletin boards, it gets put on.
Like the agenda gets put on those Shaw's, Lawrence Library, the bulletin board out front.
And Bristol Beverage.
Bristol Beverage.
Well,
and also there's
Beverage and Shaw's, I'll see, but.
Also
the
the town also has an extensive mailing list, so you can ask your name to be put on that list to be able to get updates.
Go ahead.
I was stopped on North Street you know, and honestly, I know it's not an excuse, but I really had my mind someplace else, and I don't feel like like, for me personally, if I'm going someplace, I'm driving from my house to Shaw's, you know, I'm driving down through, I see that little flashy sign, I check my speed.
Yeah.
You know, but the day I got stopped, my mind was someplace else. I had stuff going on in my world that I was not focused on what my speed was. I can't tell you what my speed was. You know, I got verbal warning, but I don't think that most people go through town, could be wrong, and they are, especially in Bristol, where you have a small community, and they're just like, okay, I'm gonna drive to Shaw's at 50 miles an hour, you know, because I'm not happy with 30 because it's too slow. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but like Main Street, I don't even know what the posted speed limit is on Main
30.
Street. But I gotta
It's 30, which is, and that's one of the reasons why we're looking to change it, given that Main Street has diagonal parking. Going 30 miles an hour through that street, which a lot of people do, is dangerous. And there have been multiple accidents of people hitting cars backing out.
No, there hasn't. I don't know, you gotta come up with that data, because that's not right. Because there's
Okay.
no police.
I mean, I've actually witnessed accidents happen. I've heard and seen cars hit each other on that street. I've lived here 17 years. I live right in town, and I was part of the downtown group, and I spend a lot of time on Main Street, and that's actually happened.
No.
I don't have photographic evidence of that.
No, they're not speed related
But I also don't
accidents.
appreciate. I also don't appreciate you speaking about stop signs on Pine Street and saying, well, it's people from out of town making those changes. That's not a valid argument for not having those things. The same thing with changing the speed. It's not a valid argument. It's not one you can bring to the table, unfortunately.
So Louis, I just wanted to address one of the other questions you had. We've had a number of families come to us that live in the village and ask of us about taking a look at this. And, you know, knowing that, you know, and we've set it up a couple of times tonight, we can't enforce it for 5 years. Well, but you have to start somewhere. And I think, Joel, that's something you've said over and over when we've talked about this too. You know, if we started 5 years ago, we'd be there now. So we're also trying, we hear what you're saying and we appreciate you coming in and we want to hear from everyone. That's why we have these meetings. But it's just to let you know, you asked that question. There have been many parents that have come to talk to us about this. And there was a group that sort of formed themselves, and that's what was the instigator for us to even look into this.
why can't it be enforced for 5 years? I don't understand that.
State statute.
If you do it without a study.
If you go
without a study.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can enforce it at the 30, but you can't enforce it at the 25 in 5 years.
Okay.
And we have, the first couple of hearings, we had a lot of people on Zoom from the East Street and West Street area that says, with the speed, it's the noise. And could, you know, the noise along with, you know, louder coming in 30 versus 25. I don't know if that's louder noise, but that's what we've been doing.
I can tell you what's a louder noise is the young kids with their little cars and their exhaust systems on.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, speed should, I mean, between 25 and 30 shouldn't be any difference in level of noise on a regular vehicle or a regular truck.
Right.
Okay. Do you want to let's get back to the ordinance, the draft that Val prepared. Any other questions regarding that? So we were talking about the 15 miles per hour in those areas. Is that something that we want to change now and just have those roads be included as 25?
That was Bruce's recommendation.
Okay.
And
now, does airport? Oh, sorry, Joel. Go ahead.
On page 3, Valerie, a couple minor corrections, and I'd like to see a change. First of all, it's not Briggs Road, it's Briggs Hill Road. Just a minor change there. And now I would agree to leave Lincoln Road 35, but Briggs Hill Road, and I still agree with Michelle, from J Drive out to Burpee Road should be 35 too. Now the Upper Notch and Upper Meehan probably could stay 30. But I don't understand bullet number 4. move the statement that all other town and state aid roads within the town of Bristol not otherwise listed would be 35. So if Moncton Road and Burpee Road are listed at 40, they stay 40.
Correct.
Okay.
But if I missed one, for example, I don't think Notch Road was listed on anything.
And then I had a text here that said South Street actually ends at the Hewitt Bridge. And so from Rounds Road to the Hewitt Bridge, because you said here from Rounds Road, Upper Notch Road.
Through the Narrows.
Through the Narrows.
Through the Narrows.
Through the
is what
Narrows
we
there.
decided last week,
What did you
or 2 weeks ago.
I missed that first part of that because I was out on bus. So what was that decided, Peter? 25 there?
Because,
No.
yeah, because of the Narrows from.
From the Hewitt Bridge to Round Road was going to
Yeah.
stay 25? Okay, because I missed the first 20 minutes. I apologize for that.
And is it correct that Rounds Road is a private road?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Going back to the 15 at 5.1, for Airport Drive, does that actually have a posted sign for 15? Do we
It
know,
does.
have we confirmed that?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. And we thought that was because it's the school district.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's well after the gate, so I believe it is the school district.
Ah,
Okay.
yes, so if it's after the gate, it's not a
Okay.
town road.
Right.
So that would be 30 then, down there. Okay, which would potentially change to 25.
The 15-mile-an-hour sign on Airport Drive is just after the entrance to the Legion. It's on
Oh,
section
interesting.
Correct, I was gonna say.
Before
Okay.
you get to the gate.
Okay, wait a minute.
I swear I saw it tonight and it was after.
Wait a minute,
Okay.
where's the
Can we have
25
people
mile an hour
not
sign?
talk in the background, please? Thank you.
Ah, thanks, Bruce. I drove past that tonight and I swear it was past that, but you're right.
There, I believe there's one past the gate as well, but there is one on Airport Drive.
Yeah, I was gonna say just before the gate or a little
Yeah.
bit before the gate,
It's
yeah.
between, right next to the fire hydrant there, just past the Legion entrance.
Right, yeah.
Going
Right.
north, there's the 15.
But there is another one just before you turn into that park. Correct. Okay. I'm not.
After the gate. Mhm.
Okay.
So I would.
You're not losing it yet, Darla.
Okay, so since
Absolutely.
that is posted as 15, I think maybe we just have the 15 miles per hour be Airport Drive, and as Bruce suggested, we take off Lawrence Lane and Lower Meadow Lane, and just have that be the 25. If that's okay with everyone.
Now I have to go and change all those numbers.
That'll be fine.
15.
Okay.
That's all right.
No, there isn't.
So the 30-mile-an-hour zone, I haven't found any ordinance where that was done, where that's shown. Of course, it's been more than 5 years, so it is what it is. But I wonder how and when that got decided.
30 where, Valerie?
Well, I guess Plank Road. No, that's Upper Notch Road and Upper Meehan Road.
Or Meehan.
And Lower Meehan, he
Well, it's
said.
not Lower Meehan, it's just Meehan.
Meehan.
I mean, it's always been 30 since I've been there.
Hmm.
Okay.
Road here.
All right, so you got Joel's concerns. Any other questions, concerns from select board members with the document?
So what was the decision about Plank Road to Burpee Road? 30 or 35?
J Drive to Burpee,
Oh, yeah, J Drive.
Yeah.
30 is what we had.
Yeah. Michelle and I wanted 35, and I think you three said 30.
I just don't see Plank Road as part of the village. That's why I just look at this, it should be 30 or 35, whatever it is now.
Well, it's 30 now, it's 30 now to J Drive and 35 from there to.
I have one question.
In the document.
Well, that's what it is now. It's 30 from North Street to J Drive and it's
And then
35.
Oh, right.
Now, you're
Chris?
also missing Purrington Road, which is up my way.
Oh,
Harvey Road on there too? I didn't.
And Harvey Road down on 116.
I mean, that's why that statement's
Statement is
in
in
there.
there, all other town and state roads, in case we miss any.
I think Chris has got it. Chris, do you have a question?
Chris?
I was just confused by why we're lowering Plank Road to 30 from J Drive out. And you've got other roads that are 35 that have similar, if not more traffic on them, and also see a large amount of pedestrian traffic with just as horrible sidewalk or lack thereof. Lovers Lane, Hewitt Road. So I was just wondering why the push to lower Plank Road, at least from J Drive out to 30, from 35 down to 30.
I think, to be honest with you, Chris, I mean, Michelle and I spoke on it last meeting, that we didn't agree with the 30. I think it was just both dropped 5 miles an hour. One went to 25, from 30 to 25, one went from 35 to 30.
I mean,
That's
the
the only thing I can
whole
think of.
ordinance is sort of arbitrary, again, because it doesn't work, but that's just a question. I mean, you all know it over.
The reason they wanted to change it from north to J Drive was the amount of people that walk that
And
section.
that's the old village.
The old village section.
Yeah.
It's still within the district.
Mhm.
So you said Lover's Lane, Chris. What are others that you suggest maybe need to be lowered?
I'm actually going the other way with it, Ian. I don't believe that you should lower, I'm just asking why, when we have other roads that are 35 that we deem safe, are we lowering a very similar road down to 30? The logic evades me.
And I got a text here, it's Chris, the same thing, about Lover's Lane, why keep that at 35 and Orchard Terrace, but I don't think Orchard Terrace is a town road.
No, it's not.
No. But they mentioned Hewitt Road.
Well, isn't Hewitt Road
35.
It's 40.
Yeah, it's because our
40.
primary focus was the old
It's
village
40.
district. That's why those roads aren't included, whereas Plank is.
Eric, you put the signs up, is it 40 or 35?
35.
35 on Hewitt?
Yeah, I just put up a brand new sign on Lover's End side, 35.
Is
And
that
there was a 35 there to begin with.
Was that one of the ones they stole?
I hope not.
These random questions like this it begs back to the traffic study aspect. I mean, we're arbitrarily trying to come up with what we think is safe. It doesn't, the logic, again, isn't there. We're pulling numbers out of the air where we don't have science or data to back it, and that's a poor policy. The fact that statute requires you to do it, and y'all are just ignoring statute.
We're not ignoring it. There was one done. I mean, Aston County Regional Planning did one. Was it 2 years ago?
Mike Winslow.
They were here last week.
Correct.
Yeah.
And he said they did 8 roads out of all the ones, and you're changing way more than 8.
They aren't gonna do one on every single road. They take
The law
map.
requires it though. For every speed limit you change, you need to do a traffic study.
Well, they reported, it was since I've been on the board, and it hadn't been that long ago, they put a counter just before, Mike Menard's place, just on that stretch there, and they put one down by Fred's, a little lower than Fred's, and they weren't there 24 hours, and somebody cut the rubber on them, cut them. So someone didn't want us to do a study. They picked their equipment up and left.
Look where you are.
Yeah.
So
You're right. No, I didn't mean that at all. No way I meant that at all.
Ian, Val has her hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no problem. Let me see if I can lower it. How do I lower the hand? Lower
Stay
the
where you
hand. I just wanted to convey an email that I received regarding this topic from Randy Fairbrother. And he says, it takes long enough to get through town as it is. Don't turn this nice town into Middlebury.
Thank you. More brain.
I don't know if anybody drove through Middlebury today, you would pull your hairs out because they were paving. It took me 10 minutes to get from my office out of
I know
town.
it's awful when they do anything to Middletown.
They had traffic backed up from North Pleasant Street.
Well, he was trying to go through town
All the way
before
out
fall.
to United Ag.
So, and again, the traffic studies, I mean, again, the V-Trans document they send out says it doesn't have to be done by a professional even. They have methodologies where Joe Citizen can do the actual studies. So I guess the biggest thing I'm asking is just do the work. And if it comes back that it warrants changing these, I'm okay with it. But to arbitrarily change things on a gut feeling is not the way you set policy.
Mike
So if
Winslow
tra-
from the Addison County Regional Planning Commission reported at the last meeting that the ACRPC did do a study 2 or 3 years ago in the village, and their findings did support lowering the speed limit.
I thought he said that they only did 8 of the streets though.
Yeah, they didn't do every street. I think they did 4 or 6 streets.
And Liberty should be raised to 35 based on their data. So I don't know.
So Chris, are you suggesting that every street requires a traffic study and then each street would be its own individual speed? Because I don't see most towns doing that.
It may not be, but the issue here is the fact that the state legislature put law in place that says that you all can make a change based on an engineering and traffic investigation, and you have, and that's what they say you have to do, and we're not doing it.
So we've done some. So what does it say in terms of the amount that you have to do? If we've done a broad range of the streets in the village, and we feel, and half of them support lowering the speed limit, and others don't, where does that fit in those parameters that the state sets?
So the other option you would have is also to punt this out to like VLCT or to the state to review this and see where it falls as far. But I mean, it says the legislative body of the municipality may establish on the basis of an engineering and traffic investigation a speed limit on all or a part of any city, town, or village highway within its jurisdiction. And then it gives some caveat to 50 miles an hour, and then it gets into gravel roads and that kind of thing. But it's per road, it's per highway, is the way that I read that. And I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but.
I guess, Bruce, I have a question for you, Bruce. Do we, the traffic counters that we have, like the one that's been sitting on my lawn, does that tell you date and time that the speed, what the highest and lowest, or no? It just tells me that I'm doing 28 coming down. I know it shuts off at 20 because when I pull into my driveway, it shuts off at 20. So, but does
so
it
the one
tell
on
us-
your street, it is collecting data, but there is I believe we need to do some kind of software upgrade but it's not providing accurate data.
I'm trying to build off what Chris is saying.
Let him finish.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, if we can correct why it's, because some of the reads, I think there were at least 2 reads 1,000 miles an hour. And if you look at the
It's a little
date,
tough to make that corner.
the date is, I think the date showing up is 2052. I haven't figured out what the issue is with that particular one, but the others are reading the speeds, and they collect the date and the time.
I guess the other three signs are.
The other 3 signs, yes. The purple one is not working properly. As far as collecting the data, the speed that it displays is accurate.
What I was trying to build off what Chris was saying, if they want some data, we try to, for 1 week, Pine Street, Liberty Street, these streets that we want to recognize, and say we have the data that they're doing 35 to 38, or they're only doing 23 to 28.
Or just all the way they tell you to do your aggregate.
And here's this, and they're doing 38 at midnight, but during the day they are. At least we'd have some data to say.
So I would suggest, if you want to use the signs that display speed, that you do not display the speed, because when people see those, they slow down. So if you reading on what they're doing when those things are not displaying the speed, you could set it up. We don't have the box device that somebody had mentioned earlier. You've got some that you can put on a utility pole or any pole, and it's blank, it's either gray or black box, and it collects data. So we have a new radar sign that came in that hasn't been installed anywhere. We could put that out there without it displaying speeds and see what we get. If
Okay. Well, we spent a great deal of time on this, and I want.
And you got one more
suggest
question. Got one more question.
Just a quick question for Bruce. Earlier, you said you had some problem areas. Are you at liberty to tell us, or is that something you can't tell us about? You said you had a few places with a bunch of calls.
we get calls about North Street, East Street, West Street, Pine Street, Liberty, and more frequently, we've been hearing a lot from Mountain Street. So I can tell you when they see a police vehicle sitting on those streets, they are driving slower.
Yeah.
I wonder what there is about that.
Right.
Try sitting there and they're not marked.
They don't appreciate that. We had.
No, I'm sure they don't.
We had complaints about the lettering that was on the truck when we first lettered it because they couldn't see
I
it.
was wondering about that. I didn't say anything, but I knew somebody would.
Okay, so we've spent a good deal of time on this, and we still have a number of items on our agenda. How do folks want to continue with this?
The one in Plainsburg does it all the time.
Just out of curiosity, since you're getting done with this subject, is it gonna be coming up again at another time, or?
That's what he's asking us to decide now.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that part, sorry.
See, it was in the paper. I know it was.
And what did you ask again?
What we want to do.
I'm just asking, we've spent a good deal of time on this, and we have a lot of other things on our agenda this evening. And so I want to move this along. It seems like we still have a number of questions that need to be answered regarding this. So I suggest perhaps moving it to having a fourth public hearing regarding this matter.
Shall I put notice in the Addison Independent?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that might be a good idea. We're probably gonna have to meet upstairs if we do that.
And I really would like to make sure, Valerie, we've got every street or every road. If we're gonna do a complete thing, we're gonna revamp this thing. Let's make sure we got every, like we said, Burrington Road is not on here. Some of these other things in the, there's a few streets or roads that we thought about doing something different with, but they're not on here. They're still a road right now. They're still town roads.
Well, I could use some help in identifying which roads they are.
I'll get the town map out and I will try to get a list for you.
Okay. I included maps of the village and the town on the website under the section.
And we do have a spreadsheet with all the road names, which ones are private, which ones are public, what their right of way is, so I can email that to you. We've had that for quite a few years now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember seeing it.
Okay.
Till next time.
So what are we gonna do as far as, are we gonna do more speed study? If we're gonna do that, how are we gonna go about doing that?
I'd like to get Mike Winslow back to talk about that and just have the data from the ones that he's done. And then, yeah, to be determined whether we need to add more.
What are these boxes that you're talking about, Bruce? Is there something we can rent or something we can
Borrow
or?
Yeah, we could do some research and find out if somebody will let us borrow them or rent them. I believe they used the box for some of the streets that they did. So in the other street, they had the line across. They're out there. We just have to find them.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I see, given we can do more studies, but I don't see us looking at individual roads and adjusting speeds. That's not what towns do. It's not what our surrounding towns do. Our surrounding towns, a number of their areas are 25, which is one of the reasons that we're looking at this and talking about this to change it in Bristol too. A lot of the public felt that the speeds that cars are going in the village area or the old village area is just far too high, and some of the speed data has aligned with that. But I don't see it as a per street basis. We're updating an ordinance that was set in 1974 or 3 or 7, whenever that was, to include
That was the
77 to it.
57.
57.
No, I thought it was 70. Or no, that's
77.
right. 77 is the town, right? Exactly. So we're updating that as opposed to going on a per street basis, because that's obviously, I think, far too complicated to have any town do.
No, but I think if we had data from more streets that supported that the speed was lower, that it would be easier to be easier to swallow.
I mean, partly too, you're lowering speed and the fatality of getting hit by a car. Your chance of surviving and being less hurt, obviously, the slower the car is going, the more chance you have of surviving, which is good. There's also, on the other side of that, the data to support slower driving through towns means that people are going to stop in your town as opposed to driving through your town. Being part of the downtown group for many years, that data is out there in terms of the slower you're going through town, the more chance of someone stopping, staying in your town, spending money in your town, enjoying your town. So I think that's on the other side of just in terms of safety. There are other reasons why bringing your village speed down can be a very positive and beneficial effect for your town.
Yes, if we're talking about postponing this, and Joel mentioned the report that we're waiting on from the Bike and Pedestrian Committee, shall we check in with them and see where they're at with that? And then if it's not too far off on the horizon, maybe we should wait until we get their report.
Joel, is the report you're talking about in terms of the potential for stop signs on Pine Street? Is that the one?
Remember, we were told that 8-10 months ago that they were looking at all kinds of things. Remember, someone came in and wanted stop signs on corner of Maple and Church Street.
Right.
And
right, and that was all connected sort of with the
pedestrian walking group that the committee on, and I've heard, because the soccer coach is on that team or on that committee, he's told me that they've been meeting. So I thought, well, maybe the 5 of us who get elected by the voters ought to see the report sometime and weigh in on it.
They're still working on it. I know they've had some issues in terms of getting a quorum for their meetings, and so that's partly, I think, the delay for this. I have seen a presentation just in terms of the concept of the stop signs and where they're suggesting that might go in, and wanting feedback from us on that. So I think that'll be the first thing that they'll talk about.
2 months ago, we were ready to send Eric with a painter to paint Pine Street, a line down it for a walking path in one way, and we kind of, wait a minute, it's August now, and we held off.
Just widen the road and do that, it would solve the problem.
It's easier said than done.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so let's move on.
I don't think this is an item for next meeting. I think it needs to be pushed out a little further than that.
Pushed out.
Okay, and published in the paper.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Regular business. Item 1, Munsell Avenue Sidewalk Scoping Study Alternatives. Dan Malik, Du Bois and King.
Yeah, good evening, all. Thanks very much for the opportunity. Appreciate it very much. We do have a presentation this evening. I'm joined by my colleague Dayton Kreitz with Du Bois and King. We're over here in our Randolph office, a couple of gaps to your southeast. So again, grateful for the time, but mindful that you do have a long agenda in front of you. So we'll step through that efficiently. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And while I do that, I also want to thank all of the members of the steering committee that have supported this effort so far, which goes back to about February or March of this year of 2022. And that includes Ian and Darla with the select board, as well as Valerie. Thank you for the support and guidance and help so far. We're not done yet, but thank you. Kevin Harper for his enthusiasm and knowledge of the town, and of course, all the insights he has to the workings and needs of the Bristol Works campus at the north end of Munsell Avenue. This is a project that's funded by both the town as well as VTrans. So Deborah Pierce, project manager with the Municipal Assistance Bureau, has been very useful, as well as Ashley Atkins and Jim Coda with the district. Eric Coda and Jill Marsano, thank you both for your quick responses to our questions about utilities, potential stormwater management initiatives there at the intersection of Munsell and Pleasant, the locations and depths of water lines. All of that could be very pertinent and useful information, as well as plowing needs along Munsell, you know, as we potentially move forward and maybe build something if that's what the town chooses to do. Also, John Swepston, your tree warden, was very graceful in providing about an hour of his time so he and I could walk up and down the street and talk about each and every street tree and hedge along its length and how a potential sidewalk may or may not impact the root systems and pruning and whatnot. And also for the half dozen or so times that we've been up and down the street on this project, it was great to simply talk with all the residents who came out and interested. And certainly, as we'll discuss, opinion wasn't unanimous one way or the other, but that was useful, as were the insights of Thad Sorrell on the corner there, which we'll get to a little later. So without further ado, we'll try to step through efficiently, but please, as we do so, please stop me if there are any questions about the particular slide we're on, and we can go back. And so what this is a scoping study, which is, you know, part of a process, if you will, that started with your town plan that you completed back in 2020 and had a ton of outreach and a fair amount of cost associated with it. The scoping study tries to drill down to a particular location where it might be possible to make an improvement. And in this case, just like Airport Drive, where our colleagues discussed, I think a couple of weeks ago, for the potential of a sidewalk, it's been identified that Munsell Avenue might also, because of the connections to Pine Street, obviously Bristol works, there are no sidewalks on it to serve the residents to get to downtown, the truck traffic that goes through and what have you, that it could be useful to get the grant and spend some money, get the grant from VTrans, spend some of the town's money and find out what the feasibility might be to build a pedestrian connection and what the public reaction might be. So the public input in this part of the process is significant, moderate, but since this is only 2 blocks, we really did drill down, as we'll talk about a little more. And then if the town so chooses, and we'll talk about next steps at the end, it could move forward into construction documentation and then potentially the building of a sidewalk or other pedestrian improvements. Part of the scoping study process is to come up with a purpose and need, and it's like a mission statement, if you will, for this particular project. And the purpose of, and I'm looking over here because I have 2 screens, to study the feasibility, as we said, the appropriateness and alternatives for creating a safe pedestrian facility along the 2 blocks of Munsell Avenue between West Street and Pine Street. And the photographs on this page, you know, we've had the opportunity to look at the street under different conditions and seasons. I first visited late January or February, and in the lower right, you see a gentleman walking, as people will do, right after a snowstorm along the street. And we're also all aware that there are, you know, stormwater issues that could potentially synergistically be addressed as part of this project. But nonetheless, they're there and we recognize them, and the town's obviously fully aware of them, as is Eric. And then the upper 2 photos, it is a busy street. A lot of folks do use this, whether it's coming home from school or simply kind of doing a loop that heads up to Pine Street and around and back down perhaps to Main Street. It was part of the steering committee's directive early on that since there are a lot of residents on Munsell Avenue, and we had the time and ability and budget that the public outreach portion should be significant. And so on our first group visit back in March, we had door hangers that we were able to put up on the doors announcing the commencement of the study. In May, We also went around and put up new door hangers saying that there was a survey that was starting. And it also gave us the opportunity to talk to folks. There's another survey for this phase of the project that's just gone live as well. And so please spread the word. It's really important when we're talking about a sidewalk that might encroach into people's relatively shallow yards or change the configuration of the frontage, or potentially, as we'll discuss, require the removal or pruning of trees. That's a big deal. And we get that. And we wanted to make sure that as many people as wanted to speak out could and had a variety of opportunities to do so, both formally through a survey, but as well as informally, one-on-one, sending messages to Valerie, which he's forwarded to us. And as part of the survey, there's a long form, no word count limit opportunity to also express, interest. You all know where we are, but the bright turquoise is Munsell Avenue, and that's Bristol Works there at the top in the north end, and Thad's Automotive and Tire at the south. You have the Village Creamy and the green, Bristol Elementary, notably Mount Abraham to the west. And I visited right as school was getting out one day, and certainly there are students that do walk down Munsell Avenue to get where they're going. They might take Pleasant to parts of Munsell, and of course the recreation field and around. And we're aware that tractor trailers might stop at Martin's, head up to Pine, and come on back down Munsell as well. And Tri-Valley Transit has a stop at Bristol Works, and that's notable that folks will go to that bus stop and either get dropped off or picked up there by that bus that has a morning and evening stop. The right-of-way is that distance that's essentially the width that gives the town certain rights for maintenance within it. And this area, as this picture shows, includes people's yards. What you have along Munsell is about a 21 to 22 foot road width that's actually paved, but the right-of-way extends to about 50 feet. And so there are those 28 feet on either edge, which if the town chose to build a sidewalk would have the opportunity to do so. But that still recognizes that these still are folks' yards. And so it's this balance that we're trying to achieve with public outreach, but recognizing that if the town chooses to move forward with some type of sidewalk, there is sort of the opportunity to work within the right-of-way.
Yeah.
Now that 14 feet on either side isn't exact. If you go on the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources Atlas, you can see that the 22-foot wide paved roadway varies a little bit within the right-of-way, but based on our analysis, it never dips below 10 feet on either side outside of the right-of-way, and we think that's useful information to know.
You have a question?
So what we learned briefly, the first part of a scoping study is really to find out, okay, what's on the ground? What are the utilities? What are the trees, et cetera? And so we looked at the corner.
Hold on one second, Dan.
Automotive. Sorry?
Hey, Dan.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Eric had a quick question.
Of course.
Road
Thanks.
foreman.
Yeah, thanks, sir.
Do the right of way, maybe it's different with a sidewalk. If I wanted to put a culvert in on somebody's property, even in our right of way, I can't just throw a culvert in. I gotta get permission from that landowner to do that. Now, is that different because it's water versus sidewalk, or because the sidewalk has never been there, do they still have to get permission first in order to be able to do that?
I don't believe explicit permission's necessary, but I might actually defer to my colleague Dayton if he has additional insight as to if or how that might differ from a water culvert project.
Yeah, I'd have to follow up with the water technicalities, Eric, but my understanding of Vermont law and right-of-way is that the right-of-way is a dedicated facility for transportation, and I would imagine that water falls into that, water and utilities, but that it's dedicated for that purpose. And there's often sort of legal wrangling about deciding where's the right of way and where's my property line. That can get a little testy for certain towns, but a lot of communities where it's well established, there's not permission required to put a sidewalk or, expand a roadway shoulder. Or I haven't heard of a lot of other communities asking permission to, say, replace a culvert or put something in if it's in the right of way. But again, it all varies, and there's certainly cases where the permission and arguments ensue when there's anything happening in that right of way because of the perception versus sort of what that is. And I do understand that as well to be an easement situation, that we have an easement for public use in the right of way for these purposes. So the town can't put up a creamy stand in the right of way without explicit permission and another easement, but they can put up a sidewalk or a road shoulder. And I'd have to look into how that applies to utilities.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Thanks. And that said, as we step through some of the alternatives, we'll see that there are some elements that property owners put within the right of way, like fences or hedges. And let's say in the case of a fence, if that fence had to be moved back 2 or 3 feet to accommodate a sidewalk, typically that would be part of the project budget. And it would be within that scope of work. So it wouldn't be on the property owner to be required to move that or relocate that. And there may be just an area where, there's an honor that's attributed to the property owner when it comes to doing things like that. But this sort of legal status, to the extent there's more we can provide for you, Eric, on that, or the difference between stormwater and a sidewalk, we're going to look into it after tonight and get back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet. No, thanks for the question. No, that's a good one. As you're considering a sidewalk or not, east side versus west side, and again, these images are turned 90 degrees. So the north toward Pine Street is to the left side of the screen. We're looking, okay, how many driveways would we have to cross? And that's an important piece of information. In the lower right corner, that's at the multi-family unit there along the east side. That's quite a stretch of road, in addition to potentially shifting those utility poles, which again is part of the project cost. You are talking about quite a bit of area to cross with a sidewalk, and there may be opportunities to speak with landlords about skinning some of that up. We also recognized the surrounding conditions. Okay, so here we are at the base in the upper right, crossing Munsell Avenue. And you can see that the radius around Thad's Tire and Automotive is slightly different than the radius, to the west side of that intersection with West Street. And there is one alternative that you see where you what if? So we thought that interesting. But as a result of that wide radius at Thad's, you have about an 80+ foot crossing of Munsell Avenue. And fundamentally, this is a pedestrian safety study and effort and initiative. And so there could be an opportunity to narrow that up, as we'll see. But that was something, we discovered. It's pretty obvious on the ground it was different, but also you can see it in the aerial. Thanks again to Jill for confirming the locations for these water lines, which actually in one block are on the west side and the other they switch over to the east side. They're about 5.5 to 7+ feet below ground, which is good to know when you're building a sidewalk, which only requires about 1 foot to 18 inches of excavation, depending on how it's built. And
the graphics may help communicate some of your points here. I think we're not seeing a screen. I think we're not seeing a screen share.
No, we are.
We are.
Oh,
No, we are.
I apologize. That's me. I apologize.
No, thanks for speaking up. If any of you lose the screen, let us know, please. And also you have your utility poles and the little green squares are dry wells and different types of projects. For example, a curbed sidewalk, as we'll discuss, is an opportunity to manage stormwater, but it also requires the addition of more of these inlets for dry wells and cost, and sort of changes the layout of the street. For the most part, around similar streets in Bristol, such as Maple, for example, they haven't been curbed. There's been a buffer and then the sidewalk, and we'll see that that's one of the alternatives that we explore. So just as part of this project, we located the utility poles, the hydrants, the dry wells, the utilities, And we also visited right after a rainstorm in May and saw in particular where there are stormwater puddling opportunities that we can help manage. Most of these are around the intersection with Pleasant. And we know, Eric, thanks again for talking about it. There's the potential for some time in the future to try to address this intersection, and potentially there's synergy with a sidewalk project, of course, in terms of the timing of both of those projects, for cost and labor efficiencies. Again, we talked with John Swepston, and we also measured out in the field the distance between the existing road and all of the trees that are right along the roadway. And it's a consideration that you see there some more deciduous trees along, the lower half. What we see here is the west side. And there are a few more evergreen trees, especially those cedars that are screening Bristol Works. And in addition to, some of the other letters after my name, which, may or may not matter, what really interests me are trees. It's why I got into this work to begin with, so became a certified arborist. And it's particularly interesting to me how projects like this influence or impact the root systems of different kinds of trees. The sensitivity of a sugar maple versus a red maple versus a white pine is actually really useful to know when it comes to either preserving a tree, deciding to take it down because we know chances of its survival are low, or how to protect it during construction. And so part of our site investigation was a deep dive into the types of trees. We have that information and the distance to a cartway and what could go in there and how a tree might be impacted. And we also know that residents care a lot about their trees, as they should. And that's a big deal in a project, to see what we can do to try to preserve a tree, or that they understand the importance of a pedestrian safety project if it means that a tree needs to either be pruned up or potentially removed. And other items include some hedges. And we mentioned the fence. This is at the southeast corner of Pleasant and Munsell Avenue, that you can imagine if a sidewalk were put in with a 4-foot wide grass strip, that this fence would have to be shifted as part of the project budget. One of the great reasons, as we noted, that this project could be useful is that a lot of folks over 100, well over 100, 150 plus, along with the police station and the medical center, it's a place of employment, and it's a place that a lot of folks in town do go to, is Bristol Works. And we understand from Kevin that there's the potential that you see in the right side of the screen for residential units up in the corner with maple and pine, and also some space down on the southern portion of the Bristol Works campus. It's a campus in an area that goes well back over 100 years in Bristol as a sort of an industrial commercial area. And, part of the impetus certainly of this scoping study was to recognize that a lot of people do come and go to Bristol Works. So we wanted to take a little deeper dive into the existing condition and the potential future condition. So the first survey we conducted was part of the local concerns or local interest and opinion gathering part of the project. It was very interesting. The upper graph shows that at least 2/3 of the people that answered the survey walk along Munsell Avenue at least weekly. And so that's a good cross section. There's another survey starting, as I mentioned. We'd want to, get as many people as we can, maybe above the 31 responses we got back in May and June. There's a general preference. Again, over 2/3 responded that the east side, if it were to be built, would be preferable. And we even heard that from residents who live on the east side of Munsell Avenue, that they see more people walking on the east side, or there are fewer obstacles on the east side, such as trees, to putting in a sidewalk. And so that was borne out in the survey. And also a preference for a curbed sidewalk right next to the road. And a lot of that might have to do with the relatively shallow front yards and the desire to reduce the encroachment into the front yard. Why not put a sidewalk right against the road that is not curbed? Well, and basically that's an extension of the roadway. So for safety purposes, raising it up that 6 or 7 inches with a concrete or granite curb is really a best practice when it comes to building a sidewalk right along the road. Of course, it increases the expense of the materials and those stormwater features that we noted. But at the same time, it would minimize encroachment into the yards and potentially save some trees as well. There was certainly not unanimous consent that a sidewalk was even necessary along Munsell Avenue. From the long form answers and the conversations that we had with people, it wasn't anti-sidewalk sentiment per se, but it was often why Munsell and why not Pine, or why not the rest of Liberty? Why a new sidewalk when the money could go to other worthy projects in the town, maintenance, what have you, some of the things that you've talked about this evening and you talk about at a lot of your meetings. So we recognize that. And as we move forward to an alternative, certainly the first potential alternative is a no-build alternative. That is something that's always in front of the town. It's always the first option, basically, in any scoping study project, is to recognize that after all this information's been gathered with the surveys, that the town could realize, either due to feasibility or public opposition, that a sidewalk isn't warranted or at this time, or that additional political will needs to be generated to support a sidewalk in the future. So before we jump into alternatives, anyone have any thoughts or questions so far? All right, hearing none. This is a sort of spaghetti subway diagram of all the alternatives that we're going to talk about, moving forward in the rest of our presentation. It's a little hard to read, but we're talking west side, east side, and right down the sides of the road, and something called advisory lanes. So I mentioned the no-build alternative that always has to be on the table. And so we wanted to recognize that up front, that the existing condition is okay, at least for now. The first alternative, however, we'd like to discuss is the west side, that's toward Mount Abraham Middle Union High School, and a curbed option. Curbed on the west side because of the number of trees on the west side, the deciduous trees you mentioned that are relatively close to the road. Putting it right along the road with a curb would reduce the number of trees by about 4 or 5 that would have to be removed. However, that's not to say that there aren't things to consider with a west side curbed alternative, and that includes shifting the hydrant at the base near West Street on the west side. It might require the removal still of about 6 trees that might be beyond the 5-foot sidewalk width. And again, 5 foot wide is the minimum that we'd want to put in for accessibility purposes, but that the encroachment of the root system is such that that tree would not be likely to survive. And so removing it as part of the project is really the prudent thing to do. And a lot of this was input from John Swepston to kind of confirm that. It would be nice, there are things you can do to support the health of a tree long-term, but ultimately might be better to remove these trees and plant one a little further back that won't require pruning or trimming if the branches encroach into the sidewalk. Recognizing, those additional trees, and that there are some utility poles, particularly, okay, first let me explain, we're looking at the entire length of Munsell Avenue right here. You might have picked up on this already. The upper illustration starts at West Street on the right and heads northward, passes over Pleasant Street. And then the lower one sort of picks up the dashed white line is where we left off in the upper image, and it continues on up to Pine Street. Thanks, in case you hadn't noticed that, on up to Bristol Works. And when you have a sidewalk that's right along the road and curbed, how you manage it at the driveway is important, because you have to dip down to the level of the driveway apron and come back up again. In the lower left, that's what we're picturing there. That's an image, could be around the corner from our office here in Randolph, of how that can be negotiated. You bring the curb, and then you have a curb taper that's 8 or 10 feet for a minimum percentage for a wheelchair user of about 8%, and then you come back on the other side. And the upper image is our illustration of how that might look. That's the west side. That's near West Street. That's that first property there that you see when you're driving along West Street. And that's how a 5-foot wide curbed sidewalk might look with the vehicles in there. That little bit of curb, interestingly, on the east side is a remnant of who knows when. There's also a little bit of sidewalk there that's kind of interesting from, according to Thad, maybe back in the 1960s. That's interesting. And issue areas, like I mentioned, moving the hydrant, moving some utility poles, and the removal of trees. Don't want to minimize that. The next one is very similar, curved, but on the east side. Again, a new crosswalk like you'd have to have when crossing Pleasant Street as well. Moving utility poles, those are the two at the multifamily building that are pictured there, but there are a few more along that might be considered, but definitely those two. So those seem the most likely, as those two are the closest to the road right now. Right at the corner there is a blue spruce that would almost certainly have to be removed. The fence itself might be able to stay where it is, the one I showed you near where that puddle was. But there's also a hedge as we move further up the road that would likely have to be pruned back significantly in an ongoing way. It's a privet hedge. They're tough as nails, but it would still require regular pruning to keep it out of the clear pathway for an east side curbed sidewalk. And there are also some dry wells on the east side of the road that are right in that sweet spot, that 5 feet or so, where a sidewalk could go in on the east side that would have to be relocated as part of this project. But a curbed sidewalk might include new dry wells right in the cartway, about 1 every 100 feet. And down at the end with Bristol Works, you see that slope. This is a view in this circle here, in that purple circle, from Pine Street looking southward along Munsell Avenue. You can see that slope up right next to Bristol Works. That would require, whether it's a curbed or buffered sidewalk, a short retaining wall, which would be necessary. It wouldn't be tough engineering wise. It could also add seating, which could be good, but it would be part of the project costs. And you see the cedars there that are right now screening the parking of Bristol Works. If a sidewalk were right along the road, you could almost certainly keep those cedars. They just require some pruning. You might notice if you were to drive by that the cedars, there are 2 sections of cedars on either side of the driveways into Bristol Works. The southern section has already been cut back, almost certainly because a patrol car, police car exiting that quickly needs to see vehicles coming up from their left very quickly, and cutting them back as they were was probably a really useful and necessary thing. And Chief Mason, correct me if I'm wrong, but that kind of pruning was probably necessary and would probably be what would have to be done up here with these cedars that extend up toward Pine Street. Again, this is the east side curb. The upper is an illustration about how that might look with some light pruning of the cedars, passing up next to Bristol Works. Similar type of, yeah.
Kevin's got a question.
Please,
Hey,
thanks,
Dan.
Kevin. Hi.
I'm not surprised that you noticed that, given your background, and we did that probably 8 or so years, maybe 5 years ago. And it was for line of sight there coming out. But what do you think as an arborist if we do the same, trim that back again? And I mean, it was pretty ugly for a couple of years. It just looked butchered. Our neighbors across the street gave us a lot of grief about it because they thought they were so pretty just the way they were, right? So that's going to always be the case. But what's hard to give up is just the sheer height and the fullness of them. Do you think it could survive? It's less about surviving the cutting, because we see that section did, but do you have room enough to go 1.5 feet down with your sidewalk base without disturbing the roots and killing off the trees?
Yeah, John Swepstone and I talked about that. He's fairly confident that the excavation for a white cedar it would survive well, the excavation for a sidewalk, particularly one that's right along the road. The trunks of these trees vary. It's about 10 or 12 feet, 8 to 10 to 12 feet, depending on in different areas. And he felt confident that the roots could survive in combination with some other things to sort of keep the trees going. Maybe some mulching or weeding around their bases. Basically, you're trying to help the trees survive that initial stress. They will put on more roots and then they'll go below the sidewalk, but you need to get them over that first year or two of shock, quite frankly, to the roots that are closer to the surface. And there are some things you can do to help that along, such as, mulching the trees and, getting out maybe some of the underbrush that could be encroaching on there and taking away soil moisture and nutrients from the trees. So it's interesting. Thanks for mentioning you have that case study of at least the above ground leaf out of what happens with that kind of pruning. And we felt fairly confident that the trees could survive a sidewalk put in right along the road. Now,
Also
if you would have
thinking just the fence, you could build I'm just thinking headlights, parking there and pointing towards the homes across the street. And I do remember with Autumn Harp in there years ago, we were running 24 hours a day or darn close to it. And the coming and going was not great, in the middle of a shift in the middle of the night or what have you.
Yeah,
So-
and that's no small thing. And we're going to look at some illustrations in a couple of slides, particularly if you have a buffered sidewalk with a 4-foot wide grass strip and then the 5-foot wide sidewalk. You'd really need to be pruning very severely these cedars. And so something like a fence could be really useful. So hold that thought, Kevin. And I know it's something we talked about even back in March. We were out there thinking, what if, and the headlight glare was one of those. And even keeping the cedars, but pruning them back almost halfway really does reduce some of their ability to block a lot of that headlight glare.
Okay.
And we have a couple illustrations.
I don't want you to think in any way we're not motivated and excited about running on the east side if that's where the general drift is, where we welcome it. And I don't care which way we go, fence, we could replace those cedars like we did over at the firehouse with some new ones. They grow awfully quickly. And, I'm open to your suggestions and would be willing to, take your lead on the best approach, but we're very flexible.
Thanks, Kevin. That's good to mention. Do you know
Dan, a
when
question.
those cedars were planted at the firehouse?
No, that way, I don't know.
When it was built.
6 years ago, we moved in 6 years ago, Dan.
Yeah.
All right.
We had a question from Sharon.
Yeah, I just wondered when they originally put that development in there, was that one of the screening requirements? And if you do anything to that, are you going to affect any permit requirements for that?
Were those trees part of the screening for the
They were
project?
not required, but it's what we suggested, recommended to separate the home to the west from and my only regret is we didn't go a little further south by another half a dozen trees. But that didn't happen. They
Have your
really did.
chance.
Right.
Dan,
it was a decision we made that was aesthetic, really, in nature.
Dan, a question I have is, we've had trouble with trees next to sidewalks is over time they bow the sidewalk. Could we have that same trouble with these spruce or these cedars get bigger and bigger if they were left, and then the new sidewalk begins to lift or pop?
Yeah, sure. With cedars, less likely. A lot of evergreens have pretty fine, well, like this. White pines are different, for example, but a lot of spruce and cedars like this have fairly fine root systems. They're not on the list of culprits, if you will, like especially a lot of maples, frankly, and oaks and a lot of deciduous. But it's something that will triple check because that's the last thing you want. And that's a maintenance headache. That's a safety headache. Thinking what you're doing is good, only to find out that it's actually worse and they have to come out anyway. And you have a sidewalk to fix. My thinking generally is err on the side of public safety and less maintenance in the future. As much as I love trees, I generally err on the side of trees grow, trees die. You need to make the right balanced decision moving forward for the entire project. But for this and every tree along the way, part of what a construction documentation would do is really drill down to exactly where the sidewalk could go, what would be next to it, and what are the potential impacts, and be a little bit on the mercenary side of the continuum when it comes out, unfortunately, to taking out a tree. That's my personal opinion of sort of looking at the big picture. But if anyone else has a different thought about how that process should be negotiated, please, chime in or let us know. All right. Well, the east sidewalk buffered is where that issue of those trees really comes into play. So the east side buffered sidewalk, we're envisioning what's typical for example, a Maple Street or what's out there on Liberty, the portion of Liberty that is sidewalked. It's a 4 foot wide grass strip, and then a 5 foot wide sidewalk. So you have that 9+ feet plus when you include sort of construction excavation needs of a clear area within which to build. But first, let me go back briefly with the curb sidewalk. I want to note, because it is important, this upper right photograph. Right now, a lot of folks do park along the roadway, whether it's overflow parking from the driveway or delivery vehicles. And certainly if you had a curb sidewalk, whether it's on the east side or the west side, that's something that wouldn't be possible. And so that's certainly a consideration, and something I know, has come up on other streets in Bristol, and it's just something important. So we figured we'd mention it. That is not so much of a problem when you have that 4 foot wide buffer. You have other issues like who maintains that 4 foot wide buffer. And we know that's a consideration or a concern, whether it's the homeowner, whether it's the town, whether it's neither, whether it's both. And that is something that would have to be, communicated clearly to all the homeowners moving forward. But it seems to be the solution that's worked the best throughout Bristol. You still have certainly utility poles to move more on the east side than if the sidewalk were right up against the road. You'd almost certainly have to shift this fence that's at the southeast corner with Pleasant Street. This hedge would either have to be moved, and privet hedges can be moved. I've seen it done and worked on it, or removed and replanted, but it really couldn't survive. You see, they're only about 5 feet now between the road and that hedge, 5 or 6 feet. And so a light trim, if it were curbed right next to the road, but that hedge wouldn't make it where it is as it is with a buffered sidewalk. There is a hydrant that would likely have to be moved up near Bristol Works, and then the hedges. So that's what it could look like. Typically, we're crossing the driveway with the surface at grade of a driveway, just continuing. We're not stopping at the edge of the driveway and then continuing on the other side. It makes a lot more sense. I know the project you just did along, is it East Street, that part of, Main Street, if you will, on the east side of the village, did just that, went right across, and it looks great, looks fantastic. It's easier, makes more sense, and there are fewer issues down the road, typically with freezing and thawing and the various materials in conflict with each other. You need to make sure that that edge is done well, whether it's gravel or asphalt, to prevent undermining from stormwater in the future. But that is the treatment we'd recommend, continuing the sidewalk surface across the material of the driveway. But first, I'm going to skip over Thad's corner for a second and get to sort of Kevin's question, because, we did a couple of mock-ups. What if this buffered sidewalk were to go in at Bristol Works? And the upper simulation the best we could do in Photoshop in our pruning job, that's kind of, you'd have to be that dramatic at the very least to keep the cedars there and put in a buffered sidewalk along Bristol Works. And in the lower, Kevin, I think this could look good, and it would block your sidewalks. And depending on the type, block your headlights rather. Depending on the type of fencing you used in the material, some are pretty robust. And if you use a fence that's solid all the way across and goes all the way down to the ground, so there are no openings, you also get some sound attenuation. Sound kind of moves like water in that it will find openings. And so you do need a solid fence of a fairly durable material, but it could look really nice and it could add some benefit of sound attenuation in addition to blocking headlights reliably and for a long time. And, you know, it's not just that one might look a little better than the other in Photoshop. I think the lower one does. It could be the best long-term solution to make sure you have something that looks attractive from day one, does the job from day one, and might be easier to maintain. And so you're not constantly either pruning things back. And frankly, those cedars, you know, do have a shelf life, if you will. They have reached maturity. I think we discussed that in the early 90s. And so given sort of the constrained place that they are between a road and a parking lot, they're not going to grow much bigger, and they're starting to reach the point in their life where they're going to start, you know, decline eventually. They might not live for another 20 years. For example. And so this could be a solution to consider at the time of a sidewalk project.
Thank you.
Heading back to Thad's, you know, we noticed, like we said, that wider radius. And Thad was generous with his time. He took around 15 minutes and he's crazy busy. And so 15 minutes for him's a lot, talking about the issues he has in terms of his needs for trucks coming and going all different ways and all different conditions, storing vehicles. Eric, you talked to me about how the plows turn around and in that area. And so while it might have been tempting to try to really neck down this crossing here, we thought, well, maybe we can solve some of what Thad also discussed, are stormwater ponding. Increase pedestrian safety, which is again the real purpose of this study, as well shorten that 80-foot plus walk across the throat of Munsell Avenue at West Street, and sort of hopefully a win-win-win-win, but still allow for truck turnarounds and plow turnarounds. So right down the hall for me is one of our transportation engineers, and he ran what's in the lower left, a truck turning study. And you'll notice the black line isn't exactly what we're proposing in the nice illustration, but he took a 32.5-foot long truck with a 22.5-foot long wheelbase. This Hino 258 seems to be fairly common for a tow truck, and so that's why we chose it. And, you know, all these lines look like spaghetti, but what the upshot is that there seemed to be some opportunity with a little bit of creativity on the part of drivers, which we know they have, to negotiate these turns in a safe way and expand the radius so it matches the radius that's right now on the west side. And so the illustration with the sidewalk here in the right middle of the page shows exactly what might be possible at this corner. You have an extended radius, you have a sidewalk that stays flush across the 60 plus feet that remain of access into Thad's Tire and Automotive for turnaround, and the lights just went on. And you could also add in a rain garden type feature to capture some of the stormwater coming off Munsell and to perhaps alleviate some of the ponding that Thad's experiencing on his property. We did reach out to Thad. We haven't yet heard back, but any insight he has will be put into the final report. You just think it might be useful, and preserving as much storage area. You often drive by and see 4 or 5 cars parked along right along the edge here. We don't want to stop that opportunity or make it the least bit unsafe for motorists. But again, this is a pedestrian safety study, so we felt it appropriate and part of our brief, if you will, to say, well, what if we can maybe solve a few problems and create a couple of compromises for the good of the order. So that's what you see on this page here. And another one we looked at, we noticed that with this buffered sidewalk meeting up at Pleasant Street, someone would have to walk into the street to walk then eastward on Maple. And so this is another what if that we noticed that the radius at this corner, this southeast corner of Munsell and Pleasant, was also wider than the other three at that intersection. And the existing radius in this lower image is the red dashed line. That's what you see. So we thought, again, what if? And Eric, this is where we could also use your insight. If there's a reason that radius was wider, it would be good to know. But let's say we narrowed it up a bit to match the other three, then we could have a continuous sidewalk heading along Munsell and up onto Maple. And that could be a useful safety improvement to look at the time of construction. So any thoughts on that, particularly Eric, whether it's the Thad's area or this at Pleasant?
No.
Okay.
I mean, we don't turn around at Thad's.
Oh, okay.
You come down Munsell, take a right, and then dump the stone, then back, straight back, and then drop, and then go back up on the Munsell. So we don't actually turn around, so to speak, there.
Okay. Well, that was our misunderstanding, but that's useful to know in further discussion.
The other one that you're talking about right here in this slide.
Yeah.
I honestly don't see why you couldn't narrow that up. I don't see any reason why not.
Dan, I think I could give you a little history there. Back in the 70s, there used to be a store there on that corner.
Oh, huh.
And you went in from the corner. You pulled in, and you kind of went out Munsell or went out West Pleasant towards Maple. And I mean,
That's
we're
probably
one,
why it was like that.
and that was probably why it was a little wider. It never got so-called put back where it was.
Yeah.
Could you go back to could you go back one slide to the, I got a question about, no, the one
that was
with
too
that,
bad. That one.
there.
Yeah.
With that wider neck at the West Street sidewalk or the West Street crossing, I know buses and cars or trucks come out of there and they try to go right, and you're going over into the eastbound lane to turn there. A bus or a truck coming out of there after they leave Martin's, or they come from Autumn Hart, or we used to be Autumn Hart,
Yeah.
and from the bakery, they come down. It's hard to make that corner right there. What's the possibility of shifting that white thick line, that stop bar line, not the stop bar line, but the center line, to the east a foot or so? Is that a possibility? To give that neck a little more so the driver could be out on that white line and then turn.
No, then you're cutting into the other right of way of the road. We only have 22 feet or whatever it is of right of way.
That could be this black line that you see that's a little faint that we used as part of the study. And we'll update the study to show then what we're considering, because this little bump up here isn't exact either. That's the existing sort of line of the cartway as it would be if it were to match the west
that's the edge
side.
of the street, so to speak.
Yeah, that's pretty much sort of where the edge of the street wants to be. Now, there's no right answer. We're in a planning stage right now. So any of these ideas are actually really good. You know, maybe there's the opportunity to widen the road at this mouth, if you will, a little bit to the west as well, to get you those 2 feet without moving.
You got a fence there, hedges there. That's why it's hard to see.
The fence is right along here. You have a fire hydrant, which is this little shadow. And then, you have your fence that's about 8 or 9 feet back from your existing edge of the road. So that could be an opportunity, because that's no small thing. What the transportation engineer did, again, with this is shorter than a tractor trailer, obviously. You can't come along, and he tried to get it to slot right into that right lane. So that's what you're seeing here. It was able to work neatly with this kind of vehicle. And so certainly you'd want to run something similar with a tractor trailer. And obviously if you're at that stop bar and you'd want to make that right turn, you'd be coming way out into, the eastbound lane of West Street. I have little doubt. Yeah.
Okay, Darla, you had a question?
Yeah, just well about this and about the last slide that you just showed too. So I live right on that corner. You know where I am, Dan.
Yep.
You've been by my house.
Mhm.
So just to say that I think I mentioned it when we were walking one day, there are a lot of big trucks that come through here. And especially right on this corner, they come and go from the hardware store. So they deliver at the back of the hardware store. And a lot of them have a really hard time making the corner to go back up Munsell toward Thad's. So that's one thing. And then the bus does come through pretty regularly too. They do a straight shot and don't seem to have an issue. But there are a number of big trucks that come in both directions, trying to turn off Munsell onto West Pleasant and then coming from West Pleasant onto Munsell. So that intersection where you had the fence with the flower on it, that's a tricky intersection for big trucks.
Okay, so this is the southwest corner, but across the street where you live, they're coming in from the west on West Pleasant, and then turning southward toward us.
Correct.
And potentially going the other direction as well?
Yeah, often
making that same opposite movement.
Yeah, they're either going, going straight through down to Bristol Works, not quite as often, but often taking that same sort of reverse route back over to Martin's. At least I believe they're going to Martin's. They're turning the corner. Where they go from there, I don't always see.
Dan, do your slide, which was top down on that intersection. There's a couple more. No, forward. It was after Thad's.
Where'd we go?
Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Yeah. So
okay.
Go back one. So yeah, looking at, that's on the other side, obviously, but
yeah, it's coming from the other way.
So if we tighten that up, are we affecting how large truck traffic is going to be able to navigate the road if we're tightening that up, or is it mainly on the west side in terms of the turning, Darla?
Probably more on the west side because that's
okay.
That's where they're turning. That's what I see. When I'm here.
Okay.
I think Darla, what you're saying, they don't come down West Pleasant from Maple.
No, they don't come
down.
well.
No, so that's
occasionally. That occasionally actually they do. There's truck traffic. I'm right here on the corner, and my office is that I'm at all day is right here. I see the trucks going both ways. So honestly, Joel, it's more coming down Munsell and going down West Pleasant than the reverse, but it does happen in both directions.
So East Pleasant, if you will, onto Munsell, southward onto Munsell, or northward on Munsell, then making that right turn onto East Pleasant. Still happens, but maybe not as often.
Correct.
As right by your house.
Right. We've had instances where someone's been stopped at the stop sign and they've had to either pull way back to let a truck through or go through the guy will wave them through so that he can get through. It's tricky sometimes.
Yep. Would you suggest that skinnying up then this south or, narrowing the radius at the southeast corner is maybe creating a problem that we needn't? I guess that might be the lesson of that.
I think so.
Okay.
You think it's going to create a problem, Darla? Because I wasn't thinking that would be create a problem for them.
I don't think you want to narrow it any more than it already is what I'm saying.
No, well, what I'm looking at is this, like you're saying, the southeast corner, this picture where the red line is. Do
they come in Munsell and turn towards North Street?
Did they come in Munsell and turn towards North Street?
No. She's talking about the opposite side. She's talking about west.
That's what we're saying.
Right.
I think Dan was asking, by doing this here, will that cause a problem for them? And I'm thinking the answer is no. As long as we don't do the other side.
Yeah, I just like I said, cars have had to move one way or the other. I'm just concerned about narrowing it at all. If that's
it's just something to be aware of. Dayton.
You're not really narrowing.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak up to say it'll certainly be on our responsibility as we refine this towards a preferred alternative design, that any narrowing of this needs to be able to accommodate large trucks moving at 25 miles an hour, right? And I think a lot of this, though, is actually a design feature that can be installed to ensure that traffic moving through these streets has to move at a low speed. A lot of these larger radii we see are designed for just ease of comfort of driving and easily just kind of making these turns by smaller cars at higher speeds and bigger trucks at higher speeds. But we'll make sure to pass this through the turning movement test again and make sure that we're not proposing radius that can't be accommodated by these larger delivery vehicles and buses that we know use these streets.
Yeah, Thad, up on the other end on Thad's, that used to be a gas station, and there was never a sidewalk or a curb out front. That was put in the last probably 20 years. And
Put that in the 80s. Put that in the 80s.
Was it in the 80s?
I did that station over in 81.
So that, but that
Gas station wasn't there.
that intersect, yeah, when I pumped gas there, it wasn't there.
Yeah, when your brother owned it, it wasn't.
Yeah. It was put in.
We had put that in when Charlie bought it.
When Corkins pulled out the side pumps and that whole thing was redone is when that got put in. Or they tried to put in side pumps.
Because I did the overhang on that in about 85 when I was in business for myself.
Yeah, but there was no sidewalk. There was no sidewalk or curb when Corkins owned it. Is when the sidewalk and the curb went in there.
Yep.
That could have been it, right, Peter?
And probably it was just. They never looked into the radius. They just put in the sidewalk so people could get there. And I think that's why that intersection is so wide.
Okay.
I don't think it was narrowed up.
Okay.
Just a legacy of that work.
A little history.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, this history is really great. Thank you all for contributing it. And great. And Dayton, I'm going to ask you to keep your camera on and start talking about advisory lanes. Briefly, I'm going to turn mine off for a sec and see if I can get the lights back on so I'm not so creepily lit.
I think you look pretty good, Dan.
Let you take over for a second.
Not a problem. Happy to. So sure. So we walked through 3 different sidewalk alternatives and how this could be developed. And in the process of reaching out to the community and talking about this project, we recognize that one of the major goals is to promote Munsell Avenue as a safer street to share the space with cars, walking, and biking. And so the other idea that came up here is to develop something referred to as advisory lanes. And these are a paint-only treatment. So it doesn't get quite the same safe and separated facility for, say, your 6-year-olds walking down the street to their neighbor's house, for pushing a stroller down the street. It might not have the same sort of accessibility levels, but it costs significantly less. You're just putting paint down on a roadway to mark these spaces on the side as shared facilities. Now, they're a relatively new and I think the technical term is an experimental treatment on roadways, according to federal highways. And what this does is this basically formalizes how we use narrow roads anyway. Narrow roads all throughout Vermont, if you're on a rural road, if you're on a town or village road, and it's really narrow, if you're driving down the road, you often in your car will sort of hug to the middle because you're going to encounter people walking or biking on that edge of the road. And so these basically dash in shoulders that are designed for people to walk or bike in and sort of to have a designated space that cars will hug to the middle. These only work on low traffic roads like Munsell. These only work on roads that have really good sight lines like Munsell. But then when 2 cars come across each other and there's no pedestrian or bicycle traffic there, they take their sides of the roadway and can pass each other easily. There's examples here in, Hanover, New Hampshire has a set of these. We've found them in Yarmouth, Maine. Burlington, Vermont's put them in. Danville, Vermont has had a set. And they work well. I think communities like them for a low cost solution for these type of areas. The caveat with all of this is that advisory lanes are, that word experimental I'm throwing around, the federal highways recognized these, entered a period of request for experiment. So all these towns you see listed on the right submitted a formal request to Federal Highway, said, we're going to put these dashed lines on our streets. Federal Highway says, that's great. Okay, thank you very much. Please report about what you hear. And then they go into this reporting phase. They've now put a moratorium. No more towns can request to experiment. And so they're sort of in a strange nebulous zone legally. And all that really means is that the town of Bristol on a town road can paint unicorns and bunnies down the middle of it if you would so like to, using your funds. These are going to be difficult to put in with federal funds until Federal Highways removes this moratorium for experiments. We're certainly hoping, given what we've heard locally about how these are working for communities, especially rural communities that may not have funding to install sidewalks left and right where they're needed, that instead of coming back experimental, these come back fully approved with, you know, these caveats about volume of roadway traffic and maintaining sight lines. But we put them out there because we think it could be a good low-cost solution to establish a walking and biking area shy of actually going to the complexity and cost of building a sidewalk. So there's a whole lot of words about advisory lanes. Happy to answer any questions about them, but we thought we'd include them as one potential that could absolutely work for the town. And to be clear, the town could put these in, but until Federal Highways removes this moratorium on requests for experiment and calling these experimental, there is sort of a small liability piece that we should be, you know, upfront about and frank in these because they are not MUTCD compliant at this point.
Yeah, we just pulled the plug on doing this about a month ago on Pine Street.
Okay, yeah, I think in early conversations I remember hearing that Pine Street was under consideration. So maybe we're in the same boat there. Maybe it's worth thinking about more.
Dayton, was there any data that why they put a moratorium on? Was the data that showed that people were getting hit or not getting? What was those calls?
That is my question, to be really frank. Like, I want to know, because it's a little bit, all my communication about this has come from VTrans, and there's, you know, I had to get John Kaplan at VTrans to show me this very obscure portion of the Federal Highway site that said, here's a moratorium. They don't give much more explanation than that. And the contacts I've had at VTrans can't tell me much more either. Again, I don't have the data sets, but I know town staffers and employees in at least 3 communities that have these installed, and people like them. There's not been an outcry of, oh, it's dangerous. There's usually an adaptation outcry by people that travel the road regularly, just saying, what is this weird thing you put on my street? But in terms of the safety that I've heard colloquially, I haven't heard anything negative. You can't necessarily rely on my, colloquial conversation. I'm waiting on Federal Highways to give us a little bit more information. But I think they sort of hit their saturation point with collecting data, because they are trying to be very formal with how they collect data from communities that have formally applied to do this. And so I'm happy to put on my list as, follow up and yell at Federal Highways. I can't promise I'll get an answer because they don't always answer, just consultants from Vermont who reach out to them. But yeah, we're waiting to find out more right now.
Thanks, Dave.
The top picture of that slide, Dave, aren't we always told our kids you walk facing traffic? And that one they're walking with traffic.
A lot of people do. But I don't want to take your meeting with a long story of my own, but I think walking in the direction of traffic, if you're in the roadway, is often safer, because if you think about how you pull out of a driveway, where you're looking where traffic's coming from, and then people start pulling out. They don't necessarily look opposite in their lane when they pull out of a driveway. And so I'm going to be teaching my kids to probably walk the direction of traffic.
Good question.
But those are details. We'll take that up another time.
You also notice that the one that Burlington installed already had a sidewalk along Flint Avenue here, and it's a slightly different condition, but we included it because, there might be lessons learned from the folks up there that could be useful still in applying it to Bristol and as well as Danville. So we'll try to, get maybe an updated photograph from Danville and hear about their experience. Thanks, Dayton. And so part of the scoping study process is to sort of see how the stars all align. in terms of the impacts. And like we said, the public outreach and how many utility poles, how many new dry wells, and what the costs might be. And so what we have, here is the beginning of the type of tabular computations that we look at and coming to what will ultimately be a recommended preferred alternative. And the cost you see in the second column from the right are planning level costs using VTrans documents. First, it's kind of a linear foot-based document, a shared youth path and sidewalk unit costs document from 2020. And we've also included some of the things like foreseen tree removal and utility pole moving and new dry wells, which actually really add up every 100 feet or so for a curbed condition. And so what you see there are more than back of the napkin computations, but should still be recognized that these are based on numbers that were generated a couple of years ago. And from, and those costs are obviously going up and evolving, but hopefully it'll give you a relatively good idea of the relative cost of each kind of project. And when a preferred alternative is identified, and that's part of the next steps. And so we have a new survey. We'll see what that says in terms of public input. We'll get back with a steering committee and say, okay, this is all the information we have. Is there an alternative for a new pedestrian amenity on Munsell Avenue that we want to dig a little deeper in, use some more refined graphics and a cost estimate where we go line by line by line by line based on VTrans numbers, plus a contingency to really get a useful number for the town to either budget or seek funding. And the next steps will also include in the final report that we present to the town several opportunities to get funding from VTrans or other programs like their Transportation Alternatives program could be a useful place to start looking. Whether if you're also at the same time choosing to build a sidewalk on Airport Drive, if there's some synergy that can happen there. I know Mike Winslow mentioned when those folks were doing their presentation, that's a possibility, some potential there, and how you can plan it all with, stormwater improvements at the intersection. But these are the kinds of tables we'll be putting together for the final report for you all to digest.
Dan,
And certainly,
yeah. Did you guys ever consider putting part of the sidewalk on one side of the road and part of the sidewalk on the other?
You've been talking with Thad? Because that's exactly what he suggested. He suggested actually starting on the west side where there are relatively few encumbrances at West Street. And at some point, whether it's at Pleasant or after or sooner, switching over to the east side, where heading up north the rest of the way, there are fewer encumbrances. It's certainly not off the table. And that's part of why we have this presentation tonight is, to see if that's a useful idea to explore further. It would add an additional crossing. And then again, a lot of the folks that are walking on Munsell, as you mentioned, are going to Bristol Works. And so if they started on the west, they would have to cross mid-block, which isn't ideal from a safety standpoint. But it's certainly a possibility. What are your thoughts about it?
No, I was just, that was my reasoning, is like, okay, how many things can we avoid to have to take out and move?
Sure.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I have a question. The fifth one down, the east sidewalk buffed and no uncurbed, buffered and no uncurbed. Was that, I know when you showed us the one slide with the fence, all the hedges were moved up Bristol Works and all. Was that a doable more there? With the hedge gone, is it doable to do a non-curbed on the north end versus the south end?
Yeah. With the hedges gone at Bristol Works, it's a pretty straight shot.
Yeah.
Does that?
And then the south end, if you stayed on that side, would just basically shift the fence. Well, more than just basically, I realize that it's.
Yeah, there's, once you start, whether it's east or west, once you start moving that 9+ feet, away from the road, you're going to start hitting more fences, more hedges, more utility poles. Right. And so that's a little bit of what bumps up the cost for that compared to a curb. But when you have a curb, you obviously have more material costs. And you have all those stormwater management features that you have to bake into that cake. And so on, heading down from the hedge, like you were saying, yeah, you have a fairly constrained condition here at the corner, with a fence, with at least one tree. You have at least 3 utility poles, and you probably there's an old hoary sugar maple right behind Thad's there that would probably have to go. That frankly, when I saw it in February, March, didn't realize was still alive. But, God bless it, it is. But it probably wouldn't survive a sidewalk project right along it, for example. And taking down a big tree next to traffic is no small thing. But it's certainly doable once, if the hedges were gone up by Bristol Works, it really is just a straight shot. There's maybe a hydrant in there that would have to be shifted. And if you continue it all the way to Pine, you'd still need that retaining wall, certainly, maybe a slightly taller one on that bit of a slope that heads up to the building on the corner.
Hey, Dan, so Jill posted a couple comments with regard to water service. You may want to grab those and put them in your notes.
Thank you. Yeah, okay, good, thanks.
All right.
Appreciate that, thank you. There's a survey up. We'll try to get the word out on our end, but please do the same. It is live now, and we'll have that running for the next month. It relies mostly on these kind of photo simulations to express the potential alternatives. And again, asks, where folks live and, their preference, and gives again an opportunity to, no word count limit, say what people think, because that's really important. And that'll be going up. Well, again, it's going on now. So incredibly grateful for your time. If there are any other questions you have right now, that's all we have.
I just have one real quick one onto Michelle's, where Thad said it was on the west side of the first section and then cut across. I've never been a real fan of keep cutting across from sidewalks to crosswalks, but you are hitting a major one that's going east and west to Mount Abe and to Maple Street. So you could cross right there and then go north. You follow what I'm saying there?
So cross at the Pleasant Munsell intersection along the south side of that intersection. Right. Yeah, right. And keep going across.
Here, okay. There's a crosswalk there now.
Yep.
For the West Pleasant intersection going to Mount Abe or going to Maple Street.
Right, cool. Right. So, yeah, that sidewalk is on the south side of West and East Pleasant. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, terrific work, Dan and co. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Obviously, I've been a part of those discussions, and I've seen this sort of progress over the months. But yeah, this is looking fantastic, and I think the photo simulations look terrific, and I think really help sell the different options that you're presenting.
Good, appreciate it. Thank you all for your time and for your insights. I'm grateful.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan, and thanks, Dayton, for this evening's presentation.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
All righty. Let's move on. So we've got regular business number 2. Consider authorizing the Treasurer's Office to switch bank accounts from M&T Bank to the National Bank of Middlebury.
Do it.
I was going to say, can I just make a motion?
I'm leaving the room. I'm an employee of the bank, so you guys decide to go.
You can make a motion.
Our office has the same issues that you guys have had, and we've gotten out.
I don't know how they can. Is it legal for them to hold our money hostage? When I read the TA report, I was.
Okay, so this has been an ongoing issue for the last couple of weeks. For some people, it's been going on since the official takeover happened in July. I know a couple residents that haven't been able to make any payments for the last 2 months on their mortgage because they don't have access to their money. So they've had to go in every once in a while. And being in Middlebury as the only bank kind of slows that down for some people. In my conference, for example, I talked to a number of banks there, and they've expressed that their numbers of new customers have increased. I know one got 324 customers July 1st. So they're
Oh,
just not
yeah.
very popular at this point.
That's
and that's
Exodus.
whoever's
Let's
gonna waste
switch.
time.
So make that motion, Michelle.
I make the
Yeah.
motion to allow the treasurer's office town of Bristol to move their accounts from M&T Bank to the National Bank of Middlebury.
Second.
ASAP.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this matter? Hearing none. All those in favor, raise their hand to say aye.
Aye.
All those against, nay.
And note that
Motion-
Joel is not voting.
Yes. Joel is absent for this vote. I'll say that the motion carried. Let's get our
Come back
money.
in, Joel.
I think you went for some cough drops.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Anthony, for working on that.
Thanks.
All right, item 3, consider authorization of a tax anticipation line of credit for up to $1,200,000 through the National Bank of Middlebury.
I'm
so
curious to
confused.
how we're gonna be so short.
That's what I was
Um,
saying.
For a month.
So this number comes from essentially FY22's due from. You add that in for consideration, and then when you also consider what has been going on with M&T Bank, we have had more expenditures without being able to draw from any sort of funds. So normally we would borrow from ourselves, but because of everything going on with M&T, we were kind of unable to do that. But that being said, one of the biggest issues for that is our due tos are pretty much about $1 million. And that is due to the fact that we used general funds to expend a lot of our projects because we were waiting on grant money or the federal government reimbursements for some of our capital projects. I know Valerie has put in a request for reimbursement for one of our grants of over $200,000. So this is more or less money that would be able to help us if we needed it. I'm not saying we're going to need all of it, but it's just good to have. I've already spoken to Chris up here.
Yeah.
From the bank. I had a meeting with him on
Friday.
And the cash flow certificate we worked on, one of the larger items on it was to balance out our due tos from FY22. So it's not necessarily like, oh God, we have no money. It's more of our expenditures are going to be higher for the next couple months than our tax. We're not going to get paid taxes until like midway through October or the beginning of November. So we've got a couple of things we need to.
And then there's going to be a major school payment.
Well, yeah. Because I don't know, Valerie, did you send them?
I did not, but I'm going to put it on the screen.
Yeah, it's okay.
I can find it.
Do we not do this every year?
No, well, we borrow from ourselves
So,
typically.
okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean, which is all right in some ways. I mean, I know the auditors in the past have made recommendations against borrowing from ourselves just because of it's easier to create a paper trail by using a tax anticipation note. I know the last one we did was 09/2010. So
The thing is if we borrow from ourselves, if we pay the interest, we pay the interest to ourselves and we don't lose any.
Which is true.
Which
is true. You are totally correct in that. This tax anticipation note would be slightly different for us because, in Chris's words, this is the off season for tax anticipation notes, so we might get a better rate. If you actually look at September's estimated expenses, That includes clearing out our due tos from FY22. And if you look down at May for estimated receipts, you'll see that it's a negative number because that is one of our larger payments towards the school taxes. So we put that against the revenue line. It's not considered an expenditure, which is why it showcases that. The working capital reserve number is the essentially, in worst case scenario, bare minimum we'd need in order to make sure that our expenditures for the month of October were met without pulling any other additional money. One of the best things I can say about the tax anticipation note, I know that we're not paying the interest to ourselves, but it's as we use it. So let's say we do go for 1.2 million, but only end up using like $350,000. Well, we have until the end of the year, June of 23, to pay it off.
Question. So with the M&T Bank problems, would we have had to have done this?
Yes, we would have, because we wouldn't have been able to borrow from ourselves. However, like after discussing with Peter, we deem it more appropriate to pay our due tos for FY22 to balance our books so we can begin the process of reviewing that for 23. On the sooner side, originally when I made this, we had included a payable line right between September and October. On the recommendation of Chris, he wanted us to take the expenditures of the $1 million and add it to the expenditures of September. So that's why it looks a little crazy.
And these numbers were reviewed closely by Peter and by Chris Lapierre at the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, we've triple checked, so to speak, and then we checked it again, and then again. But yes.
So, Anthony, is the July, August numbers?
July,
accurate?
August are actuals. In September's amount that you're seeing, in addition to the due tos, is also the actuals as of the either the 20th or the 26th. I'd have to check. But the others from October down are estimations based on FY22's expenditures and revenues.
What's the interest rate on this tax anticipation note?
I do not know yet. Chris has not given us a number. He said he would get back to me this week with a number. It's going to be less than standard tax anticipation notes because of the time of year. Because most schools and towns that do them will file in June to anticipate revenues to cover until they get taxes starting July. So we're on the off season, but I can definitely let you guys know what that would be. And hypothetically, even if we were to get approved for it and we were to get the money, even if you guys were to say, yes, okay, of course, let's do it. And we got tax money, everything came in, the requisition Valerie put in came in. That money would just sit there then. We wouldn't have to use it, but it'd be there in case.
Okay, board thoughts?
I think I'd like to know the interest rate before we make any forward motion on this.
Anthony, is this time sensitive? Can this wait until the October 10th meeting?
I've talked with Peter, and after talking about it, it is time sensitive. However, if really push came to shove and we had to push it off another week, we would be able to use the funds from M&T Bank, because when I was in my meeting on Friday, Sharon came in after having been on the phone with M&T for like 2.5 hours. And she's like, they told me to go to the bank in Middlebury. I'm going to go. What should I do? And I'm like, clear. We took the money out of the account. It's currently sitting in our general fund right now. And that was mostly done to for security purposes. So we had access to the funds in case anything were to happen.
So in other words, Sharon, explain how that happened.
Sharon Swan.
So in other words, the funds have been withdrawn from M&T and deposited into the general fund at the National Bank of Middlebury.
Yes, and that is that was not due to the anticipation of you guys saying yes to the National Bank of Middlebury. That was done because we didn't know if we were going to have another opportunity to take out the funds.
Right.
This has been 2 weeks. We have had significantly long wait times. One of the biggest things that we realized what was going on is when I tried to call to check our balances and see what was up, they said I wasn't on the account and I was on the people's account. So they had screwed up the transfer in some way, shape, or form.
So am I correct in understanding that we have all our money? We have no money in M&T Bank right at the moment?
We still have our CD, but we have emptied our capital account.
So the motion that the select board made and the previous agenda item, that's kind of retroactively authorized what happened on.
Well, not necessarily, because the request that was put forward that you guys voted on was to create a separate capital account that we'd have for our grants and capital expenditures.
True, right.
This decision on Friday was considered to be critical in regards to us being able to have access to that money. Sharon and I were both unsure what was going to happen next, because one day Sharon was able to get into one of our checking accounts, not necessarily the one with the 1.6, but just the standard one we have for our credit cards. And the day after, she wasn't able to get in anymore. So we were very skeptical and concerned.
You were being proactive to.
Are we leaving the CDs there till they mature, or are we?
We are leaving the CD until next year, when we can then transfer it over.
So can you make a motion to allow them to do the tax anticipation note pending confirmation of the interest rate?
Yeah, because we got another 2 weeks before we would decide.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that the interest rate really matters. And to answer Jill's question, yes, we only pay on what we borrow. We don't pay on the whole note.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm with allowing it to happen. I'm not really understanding this spreadsheet here, but that's okay.
I can explain it in more detail if you would like. I don't have a problem doing that.
Well, I understand. We've taken tax anticipation notes before. We've taken them against ourselves. We've taken them from the bank. So I know it's common practice. I'm not understanding the numbers, and you don't need to take the time to explain that to me tonight. It's just not.
Okay. If you want to come in the office at some point, I can definitely break it down more for you guys. I don't have a problem doing that whatsoever. Might be a little bit easier. I know that it's almost 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
So I would to the tax anticipation note through the National Bank of Middlebury
For the 1.2.
for the $1.2 million.
And
Up to, yeah.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
It would be for 1.2, but we would only borrow what we needed to borrow.
Yep. That's just like the line of credit. You don't need to use it all, but we
the
pull
ceiling.
down if we need it. And I would like to reassure the board that I would not pull unless it was absolutely necessary.
Who moved? Who made the first motion?
I did.
Who
Michelle
seconded?
seconded.
Michelle. Okay.
Only two of us here right now.
I had a question. It was related to the M&T move. It sounded as if Valerie didn't know about that move that happened on Friday. Is that correct?
I did know.
Yes, because
Okay.
when it happened, I was already at National Bank of Middlebury, and Sharon had been on the phone for two and a half hours. We had a meeting at 10. I don't know necessarily the time between that and what ended up happening 100% on the phone call, but we really deemed it a danger to not have the money in an account that we could have access to.
Oh, I totally agree. I don't see how that can even be possibly legal for them to hold our money hostage.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, so Val, did you say you did know?
I did know.
Okay, that's fine. It sounded like you didn't before the way that you were talking about it, but
Oh,
that's fine.
no.
I wanted to make sure of that. Good. Okay.
And
all right,
actually,
so-
related to that, if the select board wouldn't mind making a motion kind of retroactively authorizing that that transaction. And
Yeah,
would
I don't have an issue given that we could have potentially been in a very serious situation if your quick thinking of the town staff had not done that. So yes, I'm happy to have make that motion. I don't know how other board members feel.
Well, I thought that the motion we made covered that.
Well, this would be right. I guess, yeah, that's true. It's to open the account. I guess it doesn't say to move the money from the M&T to another account. Given that,
yeah, it didn't specify. Yeah, okay.
To move the money from M&T to National Bank of Middlebury.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm satisfied with that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for this particular thing, which is the tax anticipation line. Any other discussion on this? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye, raise your hand. Aye. All those against, nay. Motion
Joel's
carries.
abstaining again.
I'm
Oh, yes,
abstaining.
okay. Joel's abstaining. Okay.
Put words in your mouth, but-
No.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead in, sorry.
All right, let's move on to item 4. Consider acceptance of the representation letter from Monahan, Safar, and Duchamp as board counsel for the Pine Street water line replacement bond proposal.
So moved, giving Valerie authority to sign.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Further discussion.
Third.
And we have a third. All those in favor say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
All those against, nay. Motion carries.
Great, thank you.
Item 5 says tentative. How are we with these? Actually, item 5 and 6. How are we with these, Val?
Well, over the weekend, Brian Monahan did send a resolution of necessity, which is required it's required in order to then have a bond vote. And just late this afternoon, he determined that rather than it be a general bond, that it be a revenue bond. And so he sent revised language to accommodate the revenue bond perspective of a bond vote. So a critical question here is the select board prepared to issue the bond warning and include that as part of the November 8th general election? This is for the Pine Street water line replacement.
Why are we pushing for November?
Because we want to get it bidded in January for start in the spring. If we wait till March, we're gonna be late.
Well, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, the
This
prices
hasn't
could
even
go
gone
up.
out to bid yet.
No.
So
No,
they're
I
not
haven't
gonna
gone out
go-
to bid. This is an important step before going out to bid. Currently, the design plans are at the state and the construction permit is in the approval process. And the concern is that if this waits till March town meeting, that we'll miss the construction season, because by the time a bidder is selected, then there's the whole process of the contract documents. It takes some time. And then it's going to take them time to order the materials, for the materials to arrive. And by then, the fear is that we will have lost the construction season. This way, if it's approved in November and everything lines up well, then the project can be put out to bid over the winter time, which is the better time to put a project like this out to bid.
Okay, so I have a couple questions. The $940,000 figure, does that include the stormwater, or does that not include the stormwater?
It does not.
So if the plan is to move forward with this project, then doesn't it make sense to do the stormwater piece at the same time? And then
It does.
If that's the case, then who pays for the stormwater? Who pays for the water line? I assume the water line is the district residents.
It's the users.
The stormwater, would that be the town?
Total
Town. So, but the town has to vote on the whole bond.
Right.
Correct.
The whole town has to vote on the bond.
Mhm. And the sidewalk piece, we're not really considering that, are we, as part of this project?
That's not included as part of this project.
Yeah, I know. Well, I knew that, but I knew there was a talk about possibly
Right.
doing. Okay. So then if we do this bond vote and it passes, can we then get grants after the fact and then
Yes.
reimburse the bond?
Yes, that's why the language of reduced by grants and aid or other funding sources, so that there's the opportunity to do that.
Okay.
And if the bond vote passes, it doesn't obligate the town to actually do the project. We can get funds, as you just mentioned, Michelle. We can look for funds from other sources for the stormwater part. And there are a lot of funding sources out there for stormwater right now.
And if the bids come in way high, we can scrap the project. Right.
That was part of my.
We have that option.
Okay, so we do have some protection.
I mean, these could be in bidders' hands by the middle to late January. The documents be in some bidders' hands by late January, early February, to be back by March 1, let's say, just play this out.
Yeah.
I think it would be a lot better shape than waiting till March 4th.
Right.
Town meeting day. Well, it didn't pass or did pass.
Right.
So here's my question. If we do this bond vote in November, with all the ballots being sent to registered voters, how does that work? I mean, what's Sharon got to do, or what do we have to do to get?
They have to
voters if
request
they
the
don't-
ballots. We can't automatically send local ballots to
Right.
everybody. We're not allowed. People would
Right,
have to
so-
call and request them.
Can't send any local ballots.
Well, I know,
Yeah.
but that means that for all those
And
people
we
who are doing
will have
absentee aren't going to come in and vote.
True.
Yeah.
They have to request
You
it.
take that risk.
I'm going-
It was the
Sharon,
same thing
what's-
for the August one. We had local ones, they had to go out at separate times, and some people didn't vote the local ones because they didn't want to. And they'd already made their vote on the original ballot for the state election.
Mm-hmm.
Sharon, you mentioned we have two. Are there two votes that are
Yes,
local?
we have the MAUSD merger vote. So
Yes.
there's
Okay.
two local ballots.
So they're gonna have to request them anyway or come
Yes.
in.
Or come in, yes. So
And we-
people are gonna have to get the word out if you want people to vote.
Right.
And there's no state assistance with that because they've decided to send out.
No, it's a local ballot. You can't do it to everybody anyways by law. So you have to
Okay.
let them request it.
Or on voting day, you're given the
Yeah,
sheets.
they come in
Oh.
if they want.
Okay. All
But
right.
most
So our
people
language.
won't because if they've already voted on the general election ballot, which is what most people are concerned with right now. I've already been told that. Because
Okay.
I've been trying to tell people that there will be local ballots and send them out, and they're like, no, the general one's the more important one to me. I don't care about the other ones.
Yeah,
They don't
until
care
the
about-
taxes go up.
Great. Okay. All right. Good to know, Sharon. All right. Do we have a motion?
Well, I'm just going to share quickly
5 and 6?
the language of the revenue bond, and this would be the language in the bond ballot. Oops.
I'll make that motion then. I'm not, you want me to read out the whole thing or just say
No.
as printed? As presented?
No,
As
I
presented
think
is
you just
fine.
need to make a motion to,
Make a motion that we propose a bond
Bond
vote
vote,
for the
right,
Pine
okay.
Street water line replacement at the general election in November.
And approve the necessity resolution. And after tonight, I will make sure that this is on a form that can be signed.
Second.
All right. We have a motion from Joel and second. Any further discussion on this? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
All those against, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
well, in that vein, I'm just gonna do a motion to accept the warning for the special town meeting for the purpose of the bond vote.
All right, that's item 6. Consider approval of warning for special town meeting. So we have a motion, a second from Peaker, was that?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye, raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
All those against, nay. Motion carries. All right. Item 7. Finally, Eric can talk about this. Been waiting long enough. Thank you, Eric.
That's not what that's not the only thing he's waiting for.
True. He just loves these meetings.
If he could move closer to the table, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I'll ask him to.
Or he can come on.
He smells funny. We don't want him close to the table.
All right. Let's personal attacks are not. Okay, item 7.
It was.
He doesn't smell funny. I'm just picking on him.
It was a constructive comment.
Okay. Item 7, update on Basin Street stormwater and behind Howden Hall stormwater issues, and consider authorization to proceed with repairs from funds from the Capital Road Fund. Valerie and Eric.
It's come to our attention quite recently that the Basin Street stormwater system on Main Street that feeds that discharges down into Basin Street, either down the slope or down the street, something's clogging it, and the clog appears to be on the slope of the hill. And so Eric has gotten quotes from area contractors to try to scope out what the problem is and to fix it. And then behind Howden Hall, I believe when the culverts were changed with the drainage improvement project a couple years ago down West Street, and the new culvert was put down behind Howden Hall. Somehow after that, or maybe it even started before then, but the discharge from that culvert is eroding the bank, and it's over time it's become pretty severe, and the gully that's been created needs to be addressed. So that's why we're here.
That's the only reason we're here?
Wait, so with Howden Hall, how is that? How did a project happen that is then eroding the bank, given that we've just done a major reconstruction of the bank because of erosion? How did that?
It's a different location.
Right, but did we not know that?
The drainage that we put in front of the bank and up in front of the park filling and all that, where that discharges over the bank, has cut a gully.
Okay.
It needs to be stone.
It needs to be stone lined.
And remember, Ian, all that water that goes down over there also is the back of the park and I believe Church Street.
No, Church Street.
All that water coming down through there, so.
So was the design not as it should have been, it's something we didn't realize or wasn't done correctly?
I think the pipe discharge is a little higher, but I think the volume of water we've seen in these last few storms has been the issue.
Okay.
That, and I think with new pipe, with 24-inch clean pipe now, that water flows a lot faster.
Okay.
Quicker.
Yeah, because we're getting a lot of water. Okay, I just wanted to get a better understanding of that. Okay, so
the question there is, do we want to have that engineered, or do we want to just
Throw a stone on it.
fix it. And Eric and I went and looked at it, and I think that, it's gonna take a fair amount of stone, but I think if it was stone lined, it's gonna be 5-6 feet deep, maybe deeper, the stone.
Yeah. At
And
least.
that's gonna slow the water down, the water going into that's gonna get slowed down considerably and have a chance to go into the ground before it comes out.
And you're lining the pipe, is that correct?
Lining lining the area that washed out. There's a wash that's probably 10, 12 feet deep, probably 15, 20 feet wide at the top.
Yeah.
And it's a V cut like any other wash.
And you feel that this doesn't necessarily have to be engineered, that we can line it and hopefully alleviate some of these issues.
I think that by the time the water gets through the stone and gets down where it's going to discharge from the stone, it's flat enough so that we won't have the issue.
Don't have to get to the river.
Yeah.
We don't need.
No, we're a long ways from the river.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did I read in the report too that you guys feel is pretty timely? Like it needs to be done sooner rather than later?
I would say it needs to be done. Otherwise, we're gonna have a hole that we're not gonna want to deal with.
Right. I'm just thinking if we did decide to have it engineered, that would be a time span, and if you can fix it yourself, it would be better to do that, or whoever's going to fix it.
It would also increase the cost of the project overall.
Okay.
If it doesn't get engineered and fixed before April or May of next year, it could be a lot of spring rain. We could end up with a West Street project.
Right. So that was the point I wanted folks to understand.
It's beginning to undermine some trees.
Okay. All right. So that sounds like we have a fix for behind Howden. For Basin Street.
That one he hasn't had bid, and he would have to get permission from the community bank. It would be best if we could get permission from a community bank to access it from their parking lot.
For Howden. Okay. And then what about the Basin Street? Have we identified the blockage yet or not?
No,
it's.
Is that the culvert that's underneath, that's like stone lined underneath the? Okay.
Yes, the one that's stone lined that
Stone-lined.
we showed you pictures of
Right.
last year.
Right, so it's that one
The discharge is plugged.
coming out this end.
Coming out.
Coming out
Okay,
the
I'll get
south
that from
end.
you later.
Okay.
So Basin Street, top of Basin Street, the pipe coming from Bristol Financial comes across the road, and then another catch basin ties into that. Well, what's happening is when we get a heavy rain, it can't discharge out the bank over the guardrails. And so what it does is it boils up out of the catch basin on the top of Basin Street and then flows down Basin Street and then into a resident's basement. So
And again, this is all due to water volume. That
The
No, it's
issue
just
there
blocked.
is either
blocked, right?
the concrete we dumped over the bank or a tree that has fallen over in the last.
Move the pipe.
Either way, the end of the pipe is either plugged or crushed.
Oh, okay.
So I got 2 bids for that. I actually called five different contractors. Only 2 of them had time enough. Well, they didn't really have time, but they would fit it in their schedule depending on which one would get it. The other 3 told me that they didn't have time to do it this year, and I'm going to say the one behind Howden Hall, we're going to end up running into the same boat. Contractors aren't going to have time to do it, and if they do it, they're just going to try to fit it into what they've got now. So the pricing on that, if they got to fit it in, maybe a little higher than it would be if they had time to schedule it. You think? That's usually
So
what it
you've
works.
got which one priced out?
I got the Basin Street priced out here from, do you want me to say?
You can say the 2 outfits.
Okay, from Masterson's and 802 Excavation. They're the only 2 that said that they could bid on it and that they could fit it in.
Okay.
And that's for down here,
That's for down there.
Basin Street.
Yeah.
Do we want do we want to look at prices in executive session?
I don't know. There's no reason why you can't talk about the prices in open session. It's just, they're not apples to apples.
Right.
Okay.
And I think to bear that in mind when you.
All right, so like Peter said, they're not apples to apples. 802 is, each of them are doing a per day estimate. Because they don't know what's in there, they don't know how long it's gonna take, and they don't know what they're gonna find.
Fair enough.
So on Heffernan's, he's doing a machine and operator for the excavator for $2,000 a day. He's just guessing that it's 3 days. And if we need any trucks, then it's $100 an hour for trucking stone or whatever that we may need once we find out what's going on with it. Did I say how much it was a day?
Yeah.
Okay. Masterson's his is the same thing, price per day. Doesn't give a date as far as how many days or not. His is $3,500 a day, which includes the excavator, the labor, trucking. He's also got in here a job trailer for in case he needs jumping jack, compactor, saws, whatever bring on whatever you need. That's included in it. Plus he's got a $500 move-in fee. So just like Peter said, bear in mind that they're not identical.
Could we?
Technical services.
We'll probably have the stone out of our capital road.
I don't see it taking any, personally, I don't see it taking any trucking. I don't see any material leaving site, and I really don't see any material coming in.
No, I don't think we're gonna need material.
You're gonna have to, if it's crushed, you're gonna have to replace that culvert, or
We're gonna have to try to cut it off and try to do something with a piece
I'll
of
make a
pipe.
motion that we go with 802 up to 3 days, and then we reevaluate with Peter and Eric to look at the site after 3 days, and if they can't find anything, they give us.
Oh, I would say after 1 day.
Or maybe 1 day then.
I was gonna say, they should be able to find it.
I don't, personally, I don't see it, it's gonna be a little challenging getting there, but after that, I don't see it taking a whole lot of time.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we hire 802 excavating with some guidance with our road foreman and our public works select board representative.
Okay, and this would be for Basin Street.
Yeah.
Okay, and we don't have bids for the Howden Hall, correct? Okay.
No. I can, now that I know that we're gonna do it this way and not engineer it out, I can start calling the contractors and seeing if they even got time to deal with it this fall, before fall.
Is that something, given that?
Can we haul that stone ourselves and say?
Not that stuff. That's gonna be 2 or 3 foot stone.
Oh, no.
Not our trucks.
Our bodies.
Given that we're
somebody to do the work, I can haul it. That's not a problem.
Okay.
Can we back
Given that
up?
Sorry, Sharon.
Basin Street. Joel made a motion. Did anybody second?
Yeah.
Not yet.
Not yet.
You rambled on to something else.
Should Peker recuse himself?
I am going to recuse myself.
He is recused.
You have to recuse yourself.
Because it's my brother.
Yeah, but it has no effect on you.
I still don't want.
Right.
I don't.
All right, we
want
have a
any-
motion.
It's totally separate.
Can someone second that?
I'll second.
Okay. Further discussion. I have a question. So if we're potentially going with this contractor, can we ask them about the Howden Hall? Do they do a similar thing that needs to be done there?
Yes.
Okay. And
Yeah,
so
I'll reach out to the same ones that I reached out to before.
Okay.
And see if they got time to do a bigger project and see if they want to bid on it.
Okay. All right. Any further questions? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Raise your hand. Aye. All those against, nay. Motion carries.
You have a question. You were talking about using money from the capital roads. I'm just a little concerned. Was that money earmarked for something else that we're gonna use it for, and now it's zero? Now we're like taking it away from that to this?
I don't have any projects right now for that anyways.
Like the stormwater drains on Pine Street, you're thinking, Michelle?
I don't know.
I was thinking the same thing, but this we could end up with
No, I get it. I was just.
Get Kingsbury back here next year to fix the West Street slope. It'll be in front of, behind our building instead.
Yeah. Okay, so that motion carried. Let's move on. Item 8, consider authorization to proceed with Park Place sidewalk sections replacement at Park Place Dental with funds from the Sidewalk Reserve Fund.
Is this what you were getting stuff on?
Yeah.
This project was originally intended to be coupled with the East Street sidewalk project, but in the course of the East Street project, the decision was made to use that money and keep going with the East Street length. And because it didn't appear that the sidewalk panels on East Street, they were in good condition. And Eric initially thought that he could address the drainage issues by perhaps channeling into the green space somehow. But upon further inspection and representatives from the company, they were very concerned about it. And Eric went back and checked, and he found that the panels are in fact tipped in an unsafe way that collects water and ice. So he scoped out some costs, I think, and let's hear what they are.
Okay.
Don't give the price yet because I've got a question.
I'm not saying a word. Go ahead.
No.
Oh.
You can read what you're replacing, but I've got a question.
Do what now?
What exactly are we replacing? How many?
Five panels of sidewalk.
5 panels of sidewalk.
And they're right out in front of Park.
Right in front of the dentist office.
So that's 5 times 5 is 25 feet of sidewalk.
Yep, and then they opted to do a panel themselves from the sidewalk to the road for like wheelchairs or something like that. That's on them. So there's technically 6 panels that are going to be
installed. But we're
installed.
only responsible for 5.
But we're responsible for 5.
They meaning the business owner right there, or the property owner.
Property owner is going to put that other panel in from the sidewalk to the road.
Okay.
At the same time.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
That it?
I will keep my mouth shut. Well, I just, based on the price you told me, you've got a contractor you use to pour concrete. If it's only 5 panels, can we pull the panels or do you not want to get involved in that at all?
I do not at this time, just for the simple reason, and I don't have the help right now.
Okay.
And the where the panels are, there's a stone wall right there, that the stone wall is sitting on 3 inches of the concrete panels. Okay, so both contractors that I talked to, they're gonna cut as close as they can to
The stone wall.
the stone wall. They're gonna cut all that out.
So where does 5 feet start? From that point out?
Yeah. I'd like to see it start 6 inches off that stone wall personally.
Well, there's 2 different options. One of it is just to pour the concrete over, let it go right back to the stone wall, of course, raise it up and let it pour over what's gonna be left there. The other option is to start it where they cut it and then fill that in with either topsoil or gravel or something, but you're only talking probably a 4-inch space.
Yeah.
I'd like I'd like a commitment from the owners that they pull those, okay, here's the wall, over the top of the panels, and they pull them out and that wall tips.
No, they're gonna cut
They're gonna leave it.
They're gonna cut it and leave it under.
Cut it, leave it under.
And then our sidewalk's gonna go towards the Park Place, maybe 6-8 inches.
I wasn't even I was gonna keep that
4 inches.
that basically lose 4 inches right through there.
Keep it the same.
And keep
so
it the same,
matches.
so it matches the outside.
Can't you pour right up to the stone wall?
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna
Oh,
pour.
so you only
we're
lose
gonna-
what's under the wall.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
we're gonna cut it so we can get the
Lose
panels
the-
out. And then when we pour, of course, the sidewalk's gonna be raised a little bit, and then just pour right up to the stone wall.
Who the hell gave them permission to put a stone wall on top of our sidewalk?
Well, it was the previous owner.
Previous, about 3 owners
Or
before.
whoever.
That's been there since, oh Christ, what's
Yeah.
the
Montgomery did it.
I
might have been
I
involved
think it
in
was
that.
before that.
So both,
Did the sidewalk.
So are there, so, and where is it? You're going to slope it towards the green space? Okay.
See that sidewalk minimum 4 inches higher than the street.
It's already
It's already
4 inches
higher
higher than the street. It's a foot higher than the street.
Yeah,
Okay,
because
4 inches
I-
higher than the grass. I don't,
right now, the way I got it set right now is where are we? Okay, so you
See the
see up
flowers?
above Ian's head there,
Where the
where
flowers
that
are?
thing comes out to
yeah,
the street?
that's gonna be replaced.
That's gonna stay the same height. And then we're gonna just go from the outside slope and then go back towards, Bristol Dental, gonna raise it up a half inch, so it pitches towards the street a half inch. You want an inch?
We usually do 1 inch and 4 feet.
Okay,
So
no, I
it
can,
should be 1 inch and a quarter, but
I'll tell them an inch. I was just going with a half inch, but I can tell them an inch.
If
That's
you're
not a
gonna
big deal.
replace it, that little strip between the pavement and the sidewalk,
Yeah, the owner's gonna do that.
to me,
They
I'd raise
want-
that sidewalk 1.5 inches, at least an inch, 1.5 inches.
in the front,
From that stone wall to the road, I'd
and then
raise
you're
it.
gonna have to
Then
tie
you're
it, how
gonna
you
go up
gonna
like
tie it
this.
back in?
When you get past that, just tie that last panel back.
See, the 5 panels that we're doing, if you go over there and look, you stand in front of the entrance to the dentist office and you look both ways, you can see the panels go up and then they flatten. So we're going back just where they start to, flatten out. So it'll be pretty much straight through there. They're gonna start,
The other side of the driveway?
no, yeah, on the other side of the driveway, just about where that second purple flower is, that's where they're gonna start there, then they're gonna go to,
So like,
Baptist church
like
driveway.
here, where that long. where
Yep,
the
right
section
there.
is, and then you got 5 panels up.
right, and then,
Not
and right
quite to
about,
the other.
right, you're not gonna go quite to the other driveway.
And is that first panel there, Tip?
The worst panel where it holds the water is the one right in front of the stairs. And it ponds with water, I mean, we're not talking a lot, maybe
Right,
like
but
that
is the
much.
water gonna be gone, that seam that Michelle pointed to?
Yep,
Any water this side of that, is that gonna shed?
it should, cause they're gonna tie right in flat with that existing one.
Does it shed off of that one?
I don't see any remnants of any water sitting, towards the stones where it stains it and stuff and sand sits. I don't see any remnants of water sitting there.
So you're gonna tilt that from the stone wall to the road?
Yes,
An inch.
an
Okay,
inch.
then I'd be happy with that then.
Yeah.
Cause now it tilts 1 inch the other way, so they're probably
Right.
gonna raise the back about 2 inches.
Yep. And right now
Well, if you can't,
Yeah, you can raise the back.
They're cutting it off.
we're cutting it.
okay.
So you raise it up and then you just pour to the stones.
And it'll butt against
It'll
that
just-
on the bottom so it can't slide out.
Right.
We're just helping them with their stones, their stone wall.
Yeah, so I've talked to both owners. Well, yeah, the husband and the wife, I've talked to both of them. Saturday, I came down, met with Josh, and, we went through it all, talked with the owners. They're the ones that actually came up with putting that extra pad into the road. So,
It's
and
not
I,
our
and I,
responsibility anyway.
no, and I told them, I said, that would be on you guys. Yep, no problem. They were good with it. So,
We'll see what it
Is
does.
that included in this price or it's not?
yeah,
That piece is included? in
no, that piece for that is not included in this.
Okay,
That's a
not part of
separate,
Okay,
separate
well
thing.
then.
So I got a hold of Masterson's and, Matt Atkins, and, both of them said that they could do it. So, and they're both doing the same thing. They're both cutting the sidewalk, pulling it out, prepping it, and then pouring it.
I personally wouldn't, you're gonna pour concrete into that stone. If that stone ever moves, you're gonna move your sidewalk. I'd like to see it get a 2x4 width away from that stone and pour sidewalk that doesn't tie into that stone wall. I'm afraid it could move. I don't know.
It's been underneath that
Yeah, sitting on it
stone
now.
wall for years, but, I mean, I wanna say
I'm
it
not
can't
worried
happen,
about
but
Okay.
I'm not saying that can't happen.
No, I'm not saying.
I don't know how deep that stone wall goes.
Sitting on top of the
It's-
sidewalk.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's sitting
Well,
on
not
top
all
of
of
the sidewalk, yeah.
2 inches of it, you said, 2, 3
Oh,
inches?
yeah, I don't know.
That stone wall.
Them
looked-
stones ain't,
That looked 2 feet wide.
by the look, yeah, they ain't no bigger than that. The stones don't. They're just regular stone.
I have some reservations about pouring it, letting it filter into the stones. Okay.
But anyway, so that was both one doing, doing it that way.
Okay. I wish it's tough because I wish there was an easier and less expensive way to combat water, and it makes me think of our Main Street project over by Piper's Blue House right there. They cut into the sidewalk when we knew that we had water issues, and it still sits there in ponds, and it's huge. And I think we should get that fixed too.
And where's that?
That's right on Main Street. It's right by Piper's building. They grooved it. They cut like some channels into it, but it didn't do a thing. And so it's unfortunate, but I wish there were. I'm just saying, I wish there was easier ways that we could deal with this without having to pull panels. But it doesn't seem like we have that option. But I understand the dangers that the business owner is concerned about having ice right where their stairs are. So,
give us our numbers.
Okay, so Masterson's total price is, let's see, $42.80 to do it. And then Matt Atkins he didn't have time to do a sheet, so he texted me, his was $4,500 to do it. So they're relatively close.
So they're within $200 of each other? $300.
Yeah.
Is there any time difference?
Neither one of them gave me an exact time when they could do it. They just said that they would fit it in, and they asked me when it needed to be done. I said it needed to be done before snow flies. And they were both good with it, and the owner was.
Monsoon season.
Huh?
I said before monsoon season.
Yeah. And the owners were there when I was talking to Josh about timeline, and they were good with it as long as it was done before snow flies.
Before it starts freezing.
Right, before it starts freezing. And they were happy with it. So.
I'd make I don't know. I'd like to see a timeline put in of, gotta be poured by Thanksgiving. I'm just gonna take that date out.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving.
I was gonna say pour by November 1st, but that's just.
Well, you okay?
I would say.
November 1st, then I'm fine with that.
4 weeks.
Yeah, so I'll tell if you. Whoever I wanna go. All right.
And say, if you can be there by November 1st,
I'll
I'd
call-
go with Josh,
Right.
because he's lower. If you can't be, then for $300, we're going to.
Yeah, I'll call Josh first, see if he can do it. Of course, he's got a whole nother crew that does this type of stuff anyways. So I'll call him and see if he can do it, have it done by November 1st, and if he can, I'll tell him, okay, we're good, go ahead and do it.
You can't do that yet.
Until we make a motion.
So for that, do you want to do up to 4,500 to cover both, depending on who we get?
November 1st,
yeah.
I'll
Okay.
make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Motion a second. Further discussion. I just say
Sharon, you
that
get all that?
she's on
You
it.
get all
I
that
think so.
there?
Motion made by Joel to spend up to $4,500 as long as they do it by November 1st, and Peaker seconded.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Sharon's on it. I would only say, given that 45 or the 4280 doesn't include that extra panel, we just need to be organized about that with the property owner to make sure that doesn't get missed, or it's not something that the contractor isn't able to do, something like that. I worry about the balancing those two things, where it's sort of like we're not paying for this, but it's still going to be done by the contractor at the same time. So
Yeah,
they'll
they'll just have a separate bill for it.
I was gonna say,
Okay.
that's really, contractor and the business owner, that's really out of our hands.
Right, but it adds an extra layer of complexity to this. So, and we want to make sure that we know what we're getting and what we're paying for.
You just want to make sure we're paying for the 5 panels. That's what
Yes.
spelled out.
Yes. Yeah, or I don't want to do it where they do it and then for some reason don't talk to the property owner and they have to come back or something silly like that. So.
Yeah, for 25 feet.
Yeah. Okay, we have a
5
motion and a
panels
second.
could be 10. Oh,
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye. Raise your hand. Aye. All those against, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Eric.
Okay.
Are you free to leave?
Am I?
I don't
No,
know.
are we gonna do
anything
the,
else?
are we gonna do the review of
Right
the
of way.
driveway access?
Oh.
That's item 9. Continued review and potential approval of proposed consolidated driveway access and work-in right-of-way permit application and fee adjustments for each. So I see you put in that the $100 for each of those, which was good.
Yes,
From our last.
yes.
Yeah. Any other issues with this board and the changes that Val made from our last meeting?
I had a question, something that could relate to this was, last week we approved that driveway cut for Maple Street next to the old folks home between there. And we said that the sidewalk had to be 6 inches onto the driveway. I went over this weekend and there's a sidewalk already there.
Yeah.
So how do we?
No.
They don't have to take it out and put a new sidewalk there.
No.
'Cause that was only probably 4 inches. deep.
Right. In my thing, I wrote, if the sidewalk comes out,
Oh, okay.
then it's gotta be 6 inches if they have to remove it.
All right, okay. So I'm going, why are we taking that new sidewalk out? Put 6 inches there, so, okay, all right, that's all I wanted to know.
Okay. Any other comments on Val's draft of this? I think our main,
Chris has worked on this with you, right?
Yes. He did the first cut and then I made some tweaks.
So this is what they're gonna get, Val, when they go for an access permit, they're gonna get both of them now?
Correct.
All combined into one?
And they
Oh,
check
perfect.
a box to indicate which one. If they only need one, then they check just the one box and pay $100. If they need both, then they check, or if they need just the work in the right of way permit, then they just check that box and pay $100.
So it costs $100 to work in the right of way?
Yep.
Don't
That's what
cost
we
me
agreed upon.
anything to work in it right away.
And that money's going into his budget.
pocket.
Those are last.
You gotta work in it right away more.
Or less.
I'm gonna sit outside the right of way.
Yep.
All right. I think this looks good. I had the changes that we were asking about. Anything else?
Can always change it again if it turns out to be clunky.
I mean, it doesn't seem like it will be.
Yeah, I mean, one permit to do both, so that they know if they have to get both, they can.
Yeah, it's right
check-
there, right,
it's
yeah.
right. It's not like,
exactly.
okay, now you need to go and get this
So-
one, and now you need to go and get that one.
Let me ask the question then, I'm gonna play devil's advocate. The water department, somebody's applied for a new tap, and they gotta work in the right of way. Does that go under the homeowners? Or the
Yeah.
water department?
Yeah,
Water department has to.
the homeowner, yeah, whoever they're
Has
doing
to
the work
apply
for.
that. VTUMS has to apply for that, and that bill goes to homeowners?
The homeowners has to apply for it, don't they?
Yeah, but they're the ones doing the digging.
Well, no, VTUMS does the digging now. I'm gonna bring up the property up on North Street, we saw the bill here. So they would have to pay $100 to work there.
He had to get a work in the right of way permit, the guy putting the water line in.
Alright, but
But
if we
that
have a
should
water
cover
main.
him, that should cover him for the water line, his driveway, if he has to do power, anything he has to do.
Okay,
In the right of way.
but if we have a water main break, like we had one in front of the post office, we don't need to get one.
That's
Because
us.
that's
That's
us.
us. Okay, I wanted to make sure clear.
Unless we wanna pay $100 every time we dig in the right of way. Eric, you going ditching, did you pay $100 to ditch that?
I'm staying in the
All of a
shop.
sudden, Eric's budget just got fat.
Yeah.
These guys paid for.
All right. I'd accept a motion for this if people want to approve
I
it.
don't know how to put that in, communicate with the school.
I'll make a motion that we approve the, what are we doing? Approve the
Right-of-way access and work on
access.
right-of-way permit.
Yeah, access permits.
I'll second.
Okay. All right, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
All those against, nay. Motion carries. All right, let's take a look. What else we got? Okay, item 10, consider approval of the errors and emissions report from the listers.
So moved. Second.
Okay,
No
got a motion.
conversation with that one.
We got a motion and a second. Does Val want to explain what this is?
No.
Okay.
By the way, if hopefully the select board members saw the email earlier today that the original errors and emissions statement was amended today. So originally it was a positive.
Errors and emissions had errors.
It did. An emission. Indeed.
It wasn't a lot of money where it's gonna change the grand list for like the rate, so.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
$1 billion.
Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. All those against, nay. Motion carries. All right. Now we're on to
Yep.
10.
Given the time frame, if we put this off 2 weeks, it's not a big deal about the mining in the river. Right?
You want to
Let's
punt it to the 10th?
Yeah, because, it's almost 11 o'clock. I'm tired.
Okay. Let's go with 11. American Rescue Plan Act funding update. Anything for that, Val?
The committee is continuing to review all of the submissions from the public. So, the next meeting is early October, and we'll see some preliminary results.
Okay. We did get the first pass of the essentially for the folks board and public that don't know, at the last ARPA meeting, the discussion was had on how to organize all the submissions that the town has had for ARPA funding. Val had already created a fairly large spreadsheet with submissions that she had received when this was first announced and had gone on for a number of months. And then with the spaghetti dinner, with the surveys, with postcards, with public talking to the committee members, we received a lot more, over 500 submissions. And so we have Jessica Tietz is working with her class at Middlebury College, and she's using her class to help us take those submissions and put them into a form that we can look at them and actually code them and see what kind of categories they fall in. So she sent along the first draft of that, which is really interesting to see. And so the committee will be working on that at their next meeting and sort of diving down into the detail.
Did she share that? I don't remember seeing. Okay, so it's just been shared.
She shared it with me and Val and the rest of the committee, just because I've been more involved. But we can pass that along to you.
I just didn't know if it was something I missed. That's all.
Maybe. No, I don't think so. We can pass that along. It's not public yet, but it will be.
That's what I was after.
In the near future.
Well, it is
but it's exciting.
Public.
Oh, that's true. So yeah, if people do want to see that, but no, it's really great to sort of see how much feedback we've gotten from residents of the town in a large number of areas, and also interesting to see sort of how those things sort of cross each other's paths and how many are similar, the needs and wants of residents and suggestions. So it's great. It's doing I think our committee's doing great work, and the town's residents are doing great work too. Anything else for that, Val?
No.
Yeah. Item 12, review and approval of August 22nd and September 14th meeting minutes. I looked at the 22nd. It looks fine.
Yeah.
I reviewed the 22nd.
Approve August 22nd minutes with whatever changes were made.
Okay. Motion. Okay. Motion second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
All those against, nay. Motion carries. Item 13, authorize accounts payable warrant, any liquor licenses. Sharon?
Okay, accounts payable warrant was $60,256.76. I have 3 special event permits. 2 are for the same event. That would be the murder mystery that's happening on October 1st. One is from Hogback. They are providing beer, and the other one's from Lincoln Peak Vineyard, and they're providing the wine. And then my third one is for Nathan Fitzgerald down on 1794 South 116. He is getting married on Saturday, and they're going to have about 100 people there. And that's by 802 Cocktails out of Williston. Actually, South Burlington. So if you don't have a problem with either of them, I'll go ahead and approve them tomorrow on the portal.
Good.
Yep, fine with me. All right, thank you. Item 14, Select Board Roundtable. Peeker. Joe.
Just one thing, Eric and I, over a year ago, looked at a new V plow for that Kubota. We never really acted on it or anything. Guess we don't need it. We talked about it, but I just don't want to forget it, but there's another plowing season coming up. And October 10th, I'll be late. I'm going to be at Union 32 or Missisquoi with the soccer team. And then October 24th, I won't be here at all that Monday night. I've got to go to Newport with the football team. So, and I won't be back for that one for sure by 7:30, 7:45.
Can't drive fast enough.
I think for the plow, we had discussed that, and then I think it went on to further discussion about replacing the Kubota with new equipment, and then I don't think those discussions have we haven't continued those discussions.
All right, I just thought of it tonight.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Sidewalk plow. I went, oh, that's right.
There was also uncertainty about the actual dollars available in the capital equipment fund.
Right.
And we have not circled back on that to verify.
All right, Michelle.
Good.
Darla.
Good.
You good? Okay. I had a question. What did I have a question? No, I can ask Val about that. Okay, I'm good. Item 15, Town Administrator's Report.
I have nothing to add to my written report except to update you that I had a good conversation with Michael Perpall of Cushman Design Architects, and he and perhaps other members of their design team will plan on joining us on the October 10th Select Board meeting to talk about potential scope for the police station plan or concept behind the fire department.
Okay. Terrific.
That said, Kevin okayed the idea of looking into seeing if we could use their stormwater.
Yes, I brought that up. That will be part of the scope, and he thought that was a very interesting question.
Okay.
And typically they engage engineers to do that. And unfortunately, Green Mountain Engineering was the engineer for both of those projects. And
Jamie Simpson was the lead on that.
Oh, that's right. Now he's got a shingle.
Yes.
Right. Good point.
So, I mean, that's a possibility. I mean, it would be worth a phone call to ask him his thoughts.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Anything else, Val?
Nope.
Okay. Other business, correspondence reports, correspondence received. I noticed there was the 2022 Safe Routes to School Spot Improvement Program, grant money.
Correct.
Anything that we have, I mean, it covers a lot of stuff we're trying to do.
It does. I forwarded that information to the Bike Ped Committee.
Yeah.
How about the sidewalk to Mount Abe from that Safe Route to School? I mean, Jerry Hughes did a lot of work years ago on the one from, we never had a sidewalk from West Pleasant, Munsell Avenue corner to Liberty Street. And she put a lot of work into that and got a grant.
Safe routes to school.
That was through a safe route to school grant.
Well, so was the one in front of the horse run.
Yeah.
That was all part of that same one, I think.
Yeah, you're right, Michelle.
Yeah, so we have that. It's, bicycle lanes, which we're trying to do on North Street, on-road facility delineated with pavement markings and signs, shoulders for bicyclists, sidewalks, pedestrian crossing improvements. So there's a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, maybe more of those in the road, in the middle of the road signs.
Yeah, I mean, those are small potatoes in terms of some of the other stuff we could do. But yeah, I wonder if we should look at with the airport drive potential for that. What's the deadline for that? Obviously, we had our one for Munsell this evening, and they're getting close to wrapping up. Do we have a deadline for the airport drive?
It should be completed. Du Bois and King was supposed to complete that work by the end of this month, and they would have made their presentation to the Addison County Regional Planning Commission this week or last week.
Right. Okay.
But we don't have the final report yet.
Okay. But maybe something to think about.
Yeah.
Or possibly both if we decide to do both. Okay. We do have that additional one that we wanted to put in item, which was the Kids Cancer Connection.
Correct. They were
Proclamation.
looking for a proclamation, and they drafted some whereases, but it was
How do we
slightly
normally
incomplete.
handle proclamations?
It's usually drafted up, but I didn't have a chance to do that with this.
Okay.
But they have in their document, in their email, they have a sample proclamation with a bunch of whereases, and then they left the concluding statement blank.
Have we normally supported proclamations before?
Sure.
From outside organizations?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. And what do you need? You just need a motion for that?
Well, if it's something that the select board is going to be signing, then yes.
Okay.
Did anybody have a chance to review it?
I looked at it when they first sent it, but I can't recall the details tonight.
Right. So they have a lot of whereases, but then usually it's the now therefore now here be it resolved or be it proclaimed. Maybe that's all it is.
Well, I'd prefer to see something drafted up before I sign anything.
Right.
And their timing is October 23rd to 29th. I know that other cities and towns have different dates or an entire month.
So there's time.
Yeah, so there's time.
Okay. All right.
Whereas it's getting late.
Yeah, yeah. Now therefore be it resolved. I'm moved to adjourn.
Be it resolved, whereas it's getting late.
Right.
Okay.
Real quick,
All right,
Ian and Darla, there's some paperwork here you guys got to sign back from September of 17. September 17th. It's a couple of weeks
Okay.
ago.
Yep. Sorry about that.
Yep.
What's that one?
I'll get him.
Thank you.
Christmas thing.
Do we have any executive session this evening?
I don't have anything.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
We do. It's quick, and invite Eric to stay.
Is this contract related?
It's employee personnel.
Okay, Michelle.
Make a motion, we enter an executive session for 1 VSA section 313, and I invite Eric to join us.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Jill. Thanks, David.